You're listening to the Deus Volt Radio Show because God wills it. Here are your hosts, John Michael Samick, Josh Johnson, and as always, the pastor of disaster, Ken Zitch.
Our news article for the day. Thought you might be interested in some statistics here from the CDC data. CDC data. We're talking about the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control. I thought they were interesting when I looked at them. I got them from a site. I was looking this morning at a site called LouRockwell.com. Pretty good website, conservative, libertarian.
Yeah, Lou Rockwell's really good. I mean, as far as right libertarian, like he was friends with Murray Rothbard and Hans Hermann Hoppe and a lot of those guys in those circles that I've been reading a lot of for a long time. Mises, and also Lou Rockwell, he published articles by Gary North.
Yeah.
So Lou Rockwell had a good working relationship with Gary North, which I know that you've gotten some books recently from Gary North, which are fantastic. I wish his Institute for Christian Economics was still around, ICE, back in the day. So, but all them Christian Reconstructionist guys are pretty solid on a lot of stuff.
Well, for me, they're good with regards to the law. The law is for me. I don't know much about reformed groups, theonomy, and stuff like that. I do definitely.
Well, on the law, the theonomic aspect, that's the part that you're saying you like. That's one of the pillars of Christian Reconstructionism. Yeah. It has 5 pillars: Calvinism, covenantalism, presuppositionalism, theonomy,
postmillennialism.
And postmillennialism. Yep, those are the 5 pillars of Christian Reconstructionism.
Well, the law, for me, they do it. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Their analysis of the law is excellent. But in any case, this website, they pulled some data from the CDC website. This is CDC data, and I thought you guys might be interested in a little bit of data here. We're going to find out how we're doing with this year versus other years with regards to the coronavirus and the total amount of deaths in the United States. And I want to remind you, a couple of podcasts ago, we talked about the coronavirus.
Yeah, you mentioned some statistics back then, too.
Yeah. And I also told you at that time, we'll know more at the end of the year when we get the total number of deaths.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
To me, that would be the ultimate gauge in how much damage the coronavirus has actually done in our country.
Sure.
When you look at the total amount of coronavirus deaths related to other years, when you're talking about like flu or
any other virus,
related.
So
deaths.
what you're telling me is Lou Rockwell's been gauging this pretty well.
Well, yeah, the website. There's all kinds of guys on this website.
Sure.
I read this. This is my regular staple of my reading every day is LouRockwell.com.
Oh man,
it's been
for my own heart. This guy's solid. He's a red-blooded American if I ever seen one.
It's one of my websites. American Thinker too. I don't know if you know if you're
that sounds familiar.
But American Thinker is another good website. They tell it like it is. They don't pull no punches. In any case, I thought you might like to know that in 2017. Okay, going back a couple of years to get this into perspective.
Yeah.
In 2017, there were 2,813,503 total deaths in the United States. Okay, in that same time period, 2017, 234,000 of them were due to, we could say, corona or flu or virus related
virus type
of the people who died.
Of the people who died, no, it's not even that. It's actually 1%. 1%.
Yeah, it's not even 2. Yeah, because 2.8. Well, it's not even 1, is it? Because it's 2.8 deaths total, and 234,000 due to some kind of virus. So that's not even 1. It's not even 1%.
Okay, in 2018, 2,839,205 people died in total. Of that amount, viral-related deaths were 237,000. Again, this is CDC data.
similar pattern here, and I'm also noticing another pattern. But
234 in 2017, 237 in 2018.
In 2019, there were 2,855,000 total deaths.
I think death's getting out of hand, guys. I mean, 2 million every year.
2.8 million, almost 3 million every year.
Every year. I mean, I think we need to get on the mainstream news. This has to stop. This is madness.
Yeah.
2 million people die every year from death. Death is the
The
problem.
new Democrat
No,
policy.
you're talking. No, wait a second, guys.
New Democrat
This is
legislation
almost 3 million.
outlaw death. Yeah, it's almost 3 million. It's
Exactly.
almost
It's
2.8 million.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
New Democrat policy outlaw death.
Outlaw death.
Make it part of the new Green Deal.
That's right. In order to avoid death, you shall not live.
We shall not live.
Hey, if
in
you don't
order
want
to
to
avoid
die, you can't live. I mean, that's the way it is.
in order to avoid death, we need to get rid of meat. We need to get rid of cars and planes.
Wait,
and
you said get rid of meat?
Yeah.
What about liquor and spirits? Would you get rid of that too?
oh yeah,
It's
Oh,
kinda
no,
oh yeah, we
Well,
we
don't- you don't
gotta
have
get
to-
rid of.
Hey, you don't have to
we
worry about
gotta
this
get rid
guy.
of.
Hey, this guy's already going to go in the death
Wait.
statistic if you take away my whiskey
We
and my
gotta
red
get.
meat. 'Cause
We
that's
gotta
it.
get rid of. We need. In order to avoid death, we need to get rid of everything that would, bring testosterone to the male body.
Oh, well, there's a lot of things that could do that.
Now in 2020, okay, we're not through with the whole year. The thing is that we are through. This is through October 1st, 2020.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to have to extrapolate a little bit here.
Yeah.
But in 2020, according to the CDC data, and this is again whether you can call the multiplication or the division imaginative or what. Remember, this is their data.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2020, there was 2,838,000 total deaths.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2.8. Yeah.
Okay, and out of those deaths, 236,000 are going to be corona-related deaths.
So basically, every year has been basically the same.
That does not look any different.
Every year has been the same. They
Roughly.
will roughly remain the same.
Like 2 million some die, 200 some thousand die of viruses.
Yeah, this is a scam.
People, please do your research.
No,
Yeah.
'cause
Look
it's-
up your statistics.
Except it's not about that. People don't trust the research.
Don't believe the crap.
Well, look, 'cause, even me, like I could be critical of where we get our research. I mean, think about the term statistic. Do you know what the etymology of the word statistic is? It's basically reference to information that comes from the state. That's why the word state is actually in the term for
Really?
statistic. Yeah. Yep. Statistics were something that was information given by the state to the people. I think one of the first main usages of that term was in the French Revolution.
Did you look that up in the dictionary before you showed up here tonight, or did you know that already?
No, I'm a walking resource of knowledge.
Specifically in the Latin.
Comes out of his behind.
And I'm not behind.
It spews.
But that's you're not. That's correct.
That was
the word
disgusting.
statistic. You're talking about statistic actually has its provenance in the state.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yep.
Wow.
So anyway, that's the news article for today. Did you have any more thoughts on that? My thoughts are what they've been all along, and that is that this whole thing with the coronavirus is nothing more than a government perpetuated scam.
Yeah. I would agree.
It's just another virus, people.
It's just another virus. Yeah. There's no question that there's something that exists out there, maybe even that was manipulated by the Chinese scientists in that lab at Wuhan. I would suggest that they didn't do anything with regards to the virus itself to make it more deadly or lethal. What they did was they just made it more, what's it called when everybody's getting it?
Contagious.
Contagious.
Transmissible.
They made it more transmissible, and that's what we heard from the beginning. That what they did was, originally this particular strain of the coronavirus did not pass from human to human. Mm-hmm. Okay, it didn't do that until they manipulated it in the lab. So what they did was they came up with a new strain of coronavirus that was manipulated in the lab to be contagious, and they've taken this to shut down the country, to shut down churches, to force people to wear masks, which are dangerously unhealthy. And all of what we've seen going on.
Well, we're living in dark times. I mean, that science fiction storyline of the government working with China and all these billionaires.
No, I didn't make that accusation.
Well, let me hear. To manipulate viruses for like a tool for political reasons, like that is now more plausible of a storyline than the idea that the Chinamen were just like making soup out of dirty ass bats and the virus came from that. Like when I first heard that, I'm like, well, I could believe that. And then of course, as things went on, we saw what was going on. It turned out it wasn't from making soup out of bats. It turned out that it wasn't these wet markets. It was actually the Wuhan Institute for Virology, which had received financial donations, by the way, from universities in Texas, North Carolina, from the Gates Foundation. Anthony Fauci was involved, I think, in the University of North Carolina. So, I mean, the whole thing just does not add up well. It doesn't look good. And basically, there's been scientists like in India, there's been Chinese scientists, a lot that have come forward and said that it's obvious that the virus appears to be man-made. There even seems to be under a microscope the stitch marks, so to speak, of where these different aspects of the virus were kind of put together. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
But at the end of the day, this virus is not anything more than we've experienced already as human beings in the way of the common cold or the flu or stuff like that.
That's why they call it the novel coronavirus, meaning new coronavirus, which that's all they had to say, was that you have a new virus that comes from China, probably spreads like mad, could kill some people, and people were put into panic. But once again, this was not possible based on what we discussed in earlier podcasts if it wasn't for this new religion of science. Because basically people are viewing that as authoritative. It's not even about the CDC. It's about people that can speak directly to them. I mean, if you have to go on to the CDC website and look up the statistic, that's too much work for about 90% of Americans. That's too much reading for most Americans. They don't care. But when they see a talking head on the news saying that doctors, quote unquote, say that this is dangerous and this is how you protect yourself, even if they were aware of the CDC statistics, they're probably still going to tell you to do this because I think most doctors have been wanting people to live this way for a long time. I think doctors probably are like, you know what? This is the way it should be. It should be that they wear masks and they're separated and they don't go out all the time because they won't get sick as much. We won't live enjoyable, fulfilling lives either, for that matter. But never mind that. That's what medical experts care about. They care about your physical body, not necessarily the wellness of your soul. So it's easy for them to tell people to lock themselves up and don't go to work and not realizing the implications of that. We can see that with hundreds of % increase in suicide, drug abuse, overdoses, divorce, spousal abuse, child abuse. They've all skyrocketed due to the lockdown. And did the doctors care about that in their calculations? No, because they're not worried about the soul or the moral fabric of society. They're worried about the biology of society. They're worried about that clump of flesh walking around named whatever, Pastor Zitch, and they're worried about...
Me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm just a clump of flesh.
Well, according to these bozos you are. I mean, the thing is, that's the whole...
Wow.
No name calling, my bad. But yeah, so
Bozos.
The medical establishment...
John Michael didn't tell you to say that to me, did he?
No.
Oh, okay.
But the medical establishment and these doctors and this whole system is completely corrupted, and it's a new religion. And because people believe in that, they believe the lies. And when people were told, hey, the doctors say you need to stay home, they were going to listen to that. Now, if the news anchors came on and said, hey, your pastors are saying that you guys should all stay home, they would have laughed. But if their doctor tells them to stay home, they'll stay home.
Yeah.
That's because, and the pastor used to be the most educated person in the community.
And his voice was the voice of authority.
Yeah.
That's gone now. So if the doctor tells you what to do, tells you not to go to church, it don't really matter what the pastor says.
Well, can I kind of like go off on a tangent here?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, the pastor of disaster.
Well, I was going to say the whole thing, you talked about it, not only coming from China, but being manipulated, the virus being manipulated, and for being manipulated for the purpose of spreading it to people. And that goes, if we're gonna, and if that's true, then that goes right along with, Dr. Judy Mikovits in the whole pandemic video, where she basically comes out and says that this virus, the strands of it began in United States laboratories and was sent over to China.
Plandemic. I like that. That's clever.
Well,
Now,
Plandemic.
as for your tangent, Pastor.
No, I don't. I want to respond to that. I don't want to. I think that might be possible. I just want to say that might be possible, but at this point in time, the only thing that I know from the evidence is that I think it's pretty clear that China manufactured this virus from wherever they received it from, which you might be right. They might have received it from the United States. And
where else do they get it? They're not. It's not like they're smart enough to make their own.
If they did, if that's what happened, then people need to be strung up. But the thing is that if it started in China, the manipulation that I would accuse the United States of is in the media and in the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
correct.
But both of these institutions,
correct.
if you call them that, I'll give them that label, institutions, because they're well established. They're well established. We can say that these two institutions have used this virus for their own gain. For their own gain.
Yeah.
The thing is that for and as far as I'm concerned, it's been for nothing more than to contribute to the leftward drift. Mm-hmm. The leftward drift of,
It's more than a drift. It's
a faucet. It's turned on.
Oh
full
my
speed.
goodness.
Yeah. But the thing is, they utilize this virus for their own purposes. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that in my mind. How early they knew the facts about it or whatever, I'm not in a position to say because I don't know. But I can say that based upon what we know now and based upon this data right here, they've created havoc. They've created problems. They've created scared people in the country, people that are afraid to go out their doors, and so on and so forth. They're afraid to go to church, afraid to go to the market, afraid to do anything that they need to do in life. Yeah. And this is their fault. This is their fault. And when they say that the media is the third pillar of our democracy, I say the hell with that. I say we need to dismantle the media in this country if they're creating this kind of problems. They need to be charged with sedition, just like anybody else in the world, and they need to go on trial for their views.
We talk about brainwashing. You talk about, what's the title of that book?
Propaganda.
Yeah, you talk about brainwashing. You talk about propaganda.
Well, yeah,
that's exactly what the media and the Democrat Party has done with this for over the past 5 months.
See, here's the
propaganda and brainwashing people.
Here's the thing: in World War II, Joseph Goebbels was the propaganda minister of Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. Okay, now Joseph Goebbels took his life the day after Hitler did.
I think it's pronounced Goebbels, by the way.
What's it pronounced?
Goebbels.
Goebbels.
Okay, like gerbils. Goebbels.
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, Joseph Goebbels he killed himself and his family. He killed himself and his family after Hitler did about 24 hours later. Mm-hmm. Okay, but somewhere in the vicinity of 9 months after the end of the war, 8 to 9 months after the end of the war, they put all of the Nazi Party officials from the different departments on trial for crimes against humanity.
Nuremberg trials.
The Nuremberg trials.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what the media has done in this country over the past couple of months is no difference from what... Now Goebbels never went to trial because Goebbels killed himself.
Yeah, I believe they took cyanide capsules down in the bunker.
Yeah, they did. If Goebbels would have lived, mm-hmm. he would have been up there in the docket with Göring. Mm-hmm. So my contention here, this is what I want. My point is that if they could have charged Goebbels or Göring or any of those folks with crimes against humanity, mm-hmm. then what we've seen over the last 6 months here in this country could likewise qualify for that kind of treatment. Mm-hmm. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, but our media has always been hypocritical on this because less likely they'd be willing to jump all over Nazi Germany for the alleged 6 million deaths of Jews in World War II, even though there wasn't 6 million Jews in all of Europe. But if you actually looked at the Holodomor, where you have millions of people killed by Stalin in Ukraine, The media didn't care. In fact, the Times actually was supporting the cover-up not to get information of the Holodomor over to the United States, where Stalin and the Soviets killed all these millions of people in the Ukraine. And there's other examples like China, like the Cultural Revolution that was happening in China during the 60s. We didn't really hear about it here. The Beatles went over there and thought that they could make songs about it, and like it was no big deal, but they were doing basically
leave the Beatles alone.
Hey, well, I mean, it is what it is.
Hey, not the best rock band. Just saying.
Hey, wait a minute.
Here we go.
This could create a schism in our group here.
Yeah. Hey, imagine there's no heaven. I mean, let's not.
Come on, man. Yeah, I mean,
get into that.
But anyway, I want to.
We all live in a yellow submarine. I think they were a little high when they wrote that one.
I want to imagine that there's no criticism of the Beatles here.
Oh,
that's right. Imagine there's no criticism.
There's an old saying I heard: "Wish in one hand."
What's that song about? What's that song? I get by with little help. I get high with little help from my friends.
Yeah. Hey, listen. Back in the day, that was acceptable discourse. Knock it off. And then there's Lucy in the Sky with diamonds. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. LSD. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting off into that.
Oh boy!
Stop.
Psychedelic music here. All right. So I was missing what I was going to say.
But anyway, what I was saying is that
you're talking about the media go over China.
The media needs to be held accountable. We cannot just allow the media to walk off here scot-free in what they've done, just by virtue of the fact that supposedly they're the third pillar of the democracy, or the media needs to be free. I see too many.
There shouldn't be any pillar of the democracy.
I see too many Republicans, saying, "Oh, we can't do nothing. We can't say nothing about the media. We can't do nothing about the media." This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous talk.
That is.
The thing is that when the media is intentionally setting out to undermine the values of our culture, they should be held accountable for it.
Tell people not to listen. Boycott.
I'm
boycott the media.
Yeah, that's one way. But in my mind, they should be put in jail.
You mean
they should be charged
for fake news?
For fake news.
Because let's be honest, it's not just the past 5 months. It's been the past 4 years.
See, I can get sued for libel. Okay. I can get sued for libel.
Yeah.
The media has been libeling.
Yeah.
The American public.
Yeah.
They've been libeling President Trump for the past 6 months. And
but who gets to define libel?
Huh?
Who gets defined?
Unfortunately, it's the courts, and the courts have been.
So that would be my objection. That doesn't impress me a whole lot, because this is the British model, right? That's libel is the standard for which the media is scrutinized.
Maybe libel wasn't the right word.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying though, for outward lies. But the thing is like if we don't agree on what the standard is as to how we define truth, we're not going to be able to define a standard for how we define lies.
Oh, that's the problem with our culture.
Correct. And so because we don't share a common moral code,
right.
Libel laws will just be used against Christians. They're not going to be used against the media.
Yeah.
They would be used against us. Also, the term that they use about like the third pillar of the democracy. I've heard the term the fourth estate as a common term in reference to the media.
That's what I was watching.
Yeah, because it's referring to referring to the three estates of France during the French Revolution. Okay, where you talk about like the nobility, you talk about the priests of the Roman Catholic Church, and I believe the third estate was like the middle class, like the common folk. And then the fourth estate is a term referred to the media that came into parlance later on because of the significance it has for the society's structure. Right. So in the United States, the media is called the fourth estate because unlike these other groups, it holds sway similar to these other groups historically have held sway. So they have a lot of power in the nation. Freedom of the press guarantees that we can basically speak on any topic that we want, basically. We can't make threats of violence. The whole warning in screaming in a crowded theater thing that everybody talks about, that basically falls under a similar category for liability. Mm-hmm. So all of that makes sense. But the thing is like, so when we talk about the media being held liable for what they say, the thing is we have to understand who is funding the media and how powerful they are, these billionaires that own them, and that they're tied to these globalist.
Let me ask you a question and see how you
answer
it based upon what you just said there. If we have people, individuals, corporations funding the media, funding the media, are they legitimately entitled then to be called media?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if the media is just freedom of the press, I mean, they're privately owned. They're not owned by the state per se. I mean, some of them are foreign.
But they're representing the interests of they're representing the point of view of the interests that's funding them.
Correct. And technically, we're representing right now on this podcast.
They're not representing the people.
No.
Well, you're going to represent, but to say, but who's representing, what does it mean to represent the people?
Well, to be unbiased.
That's not possible.
To report news as it happens unbiasedly.
It's not possible to report. It's not possible to report news unbiasedly.
Local channels still do it somewhat.
I don't believe that.
You mean without giving your opinion?
Without giving your
no
opinion,
editorial
no.
comment.
Oh,
No
okay,
editorial
okay, yeah,
comment.
okay, yeah. You can do, sure, that is possible.
I think well,
That's
right there we're
possible.
differentiating between news and media.
Correct.
Okay, so when we discuss
Correct.
news, reporting the facts just as they stated in a quote unquote scientific way. That's like a separate thing,
and that's what should be protected.
Yeah, we'll see.
But the media.
Yeah, but freedom of the press protects what we're doing right now.
Huh?
But freedom of the press protects what we're doing right now, speaking the way that we're speaking.
We're
on
not
this
putting
podcast.
ourselves out, Josh, to be newscasters. We're not putting ourselves. We're not telling anybody that we're unbiased.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing.
But are they even doing that anymore? Like in 2016, when Trump was elected, the New York Times brought out an editorial that said that it's the media no longer can claim to be unbiased, and this was a liberal media claiming it. Like we admit that we're biased. In fact, in the New York
Christian.
Times. Well, no, I'm talking about the liberals here.
Yeah.
I'm saying in the New York Times editorial in response to Trump's election in 2016. The New York Times came out and said that we admit that we're not biased, and we would actually say that it's a duty of the media to oppose Donald Trump.
Why?
Because they believed that he was a threat to the nation, and they had a moral prerogative to use their
But what was
positions.
that but their opinion?
Well, they claimed it was. It was an editorial. That's what an editorials mean. The thing you're criticizing is editorializations of things that are claimed to be unbiased straight news.
Right.
Which certain places are still doing that, and I would say that's falsifying what you're claiming to be giving people. I mean, you could probably say that that's morally wrong. Like that there is probably legal recourse. I mean, that's kind of like what Trump did with social media, where it talked about the publisher versus platform distinction and that needing to be investigated. I think it falls under that too. If you claim one thing, you have to kind of hold to that. Like if you are a platform, you have to act like a platform. You don't edit or censor people's comments on the platform, because then that would make you a publisher, because now you're claiming liability for the things said. Otherwise, why would you edit people out or cancel them or ban them or whatever? So that's what I mean here. It would fall under a similar distinction like that, where people are claiming to give straight news and are also giving editorializations. That is the thing that they have to be honest on. And I don't have a problem with there being some sort of legal distinction there that needs to be enforced.
Right.
But,
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But when they start lying about stuff, that becomes a problem.
Yeah, okay. So all about statistics and science and things like that. I mean, that stuff isn't hard, because science isn't hard, because a lot of it is on the interpretation of this doctor or that doctor. John Hopkins can disagree with Harvard. I mean, you could have doctors from John Hopkins University and you could have doctors from Harvard Medical School, and the two could get in the room and they could disagree on certain medical applications.
That's different, though.
You could have, I'm saying this, but once we're going to say that the other one isn't giving the facts. One's lying. Well, which one's lying?
No, but when they quote, for instance, when they say Donald Trump said this, and they take it completely out of context.
Yeah, well, they'll say, well, he did say that. We didn't have to give the context. Or you could read on and request the context.
That's misrepresentation.
Well, no. I think it's propaganda.
Misrepresentation.
Propaganda. And this is what I'm reading in Jacques Ellul.
But it's
really
misrepresentation of, because that's not what they're saying he said is not what he actually said.
I agree, but what do you do about that? I guess I don't know what you want to be. I mean, because you can have satire that takes people out of context. I mean, the thing is, there's not much you can do, because at the end of the day, it's propaganda.
I'm getting the sense that you misunderstand. You've misunderstood what I was saying, and I'm talking about specifically that which claims to be unbiased news. Mm-hmm. The thing is that by all rights, everything that we learn now about the coronavirus has been put out as something different by quote unquote legitimate news sources. And the thing is that this has been false all along, and it was known to be false from the beginning. And these legitimate news sources need to be put out of business for riding this pony as long as they have.
To be honest, until the coronavirus happened, they were actually starting to go out of business because social media has destroyed news ratings. In some ways, before Trump came along, they were really doing bad.
Yeah.
Trump actually gave him a boost because they can't help but cover him because of his personality.
Yeah.
So the media has taken punishment for fake news. They have taken their ratings have reflected this.
True.
The movement from standard media. It's not as common where we're at because we still live in an area where there's a lot of elderly people in this region, and so on a local level, people here are still tend to be captivated by like the big ones, right? Like ABC, CBS, and MSNBC, Fox. Like these big stations are ones that people that are more elderly in rural communities with their cable subscriptions, they get these certain standard channels, and that's their news source. Younger generations tend to go to online to social media and to direct news sites like InfoWars, for example, or Breitbart or whoever.
Epoch News.
Epoch News. People used to go to Drudge Report before he went off the rails. But that's the whole thing is you could get direct news sources. You didn't have to go through these media conglomerates, and they've taken the hit. They have been punished. And the thing is, in a free market kind of way, they have suffered. The thing is that most of these people that are running in the media, they're basically in league with Satan. Some of them would actually probably admit it. They're part of these global cabals. They have vestments from foreign powers. And there's really nothing we can do about it because there's this unified Maoist agenda, this communistic, neo-pagan kind of thing it's so pervasive that the media is just the spokesperson for this demonic system, and which includes the state. And the thing that they're teaching us is propaganda. It's manipulative, it's psychological warfare. It's the opposite of the Word of God because it uses information misconstrued and misinterpreted in order to drive us to certain actions that move us towards or to conformity to their ideals. That's what propaganda works. And in fact, in many ways, it's the opposite of the Word of God because propaganda specifically manipulates you regarding emotions.
Yeah.
Whereas the Word of God appeals to your reason and breaks the bondage of your will to the slavery of sin.
But propaganda also makes you a mindless automaton in the sense that it doesn't get you thinking about anything. It basically tells you what you need to be thinking, it tells you what the facts are, it tells you what to believe, and it tells you what you should be your emotional response towards it. Instead of challenging you to think and challenging you to actually bring your reason to the situation, to the story, whatever it is, to what's going on, and address it and struggle through it. Like in propaganda, there is no struggling. It's just basically, this is what we believe, and it's whatever we believe, whatever the media source is telling us to believe, and we have the response that the media source is telling us to respond. We have the response that the media source is telling us that we need to have. And when we're asked, well, why do we have this, a reason for why we have this response and why we hold this position, we just point back to the media source. There is no, this is the reason that I have this, and point by point by point, and I've thought it out, and I've reasoned to a certain degree, and I've done my research and put all the facts together and come to this conclusion. No, because the media has already done that for you, and that's the purpose of propaganda.
That's a complex question. It is. I admit that. The thing is that you have the media, which clearly knows what it's doing and is doing what it's doing. But on the other hand, you have the American population who allows it to do what it does. And that is a problem.
Well, propaganda.
We need to boycott them. I mean, at the very least, we need to boycott them and tell people not to listen to these kind of news stations.
Yeah. Yeah.
these kind of media platforms, because the more you listen to it, the more influenced by that you're going, and maybe it's gotten to a point of not even interacting with it. Because honestly, the more you interact with it, the more you're going to be swayed to reason not from a Christian perspective, not from your own reason, not from your own rationale, from your own worldview, but you're going to be persuaded to reason from their worldview.
Yeah, a good example of this is a lot of I think the epitome, or maybe the apex of Western propaganda now, is with this new left and the way that it does its sloganeering, like Black Lives Matter. Okay, like that phrase, Black Lives Matter. The reason it works well as propaganda is because, first of all, it's not a question, it's not a rational, it's not a proposition that's, that normally people would take as true or false. The way that it is phrased, Black Lives Matter, it's almost imperative.
This makes sense.
Yeah, well, to me, it assumes
it's like common sense statement.
That when I first heard the statement Black Lives Matter, for the assumption that I heard that was being made was, in the past, Black lives have not mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Now we need to consider that Black people matter too.
Well, that's part of the propaganda.
That's what I'm saying. You're right.
Exactly.
That's propaganda.
Exactly.
Because that isn't what they mean. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's not what they mean. But what the phrase is supposed to invoke in common people who are not, let's say,
slavery.
Marxist, it makes them think about slavery. It appeals on already preconditioned notions within white society of a guilt towards how African Americans were treated.
It's an emotional appeal.
Yeah, it goes even further than that. It makes it like a simplistic remark that, without qualification, requires that people accept it. And then it also requires action. It's not enough to say, because it's another statement that they make: white silence equals white violence.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they mean by that is that when you don't actively speak out against fill in the blank, police brutality or whatever they're railing against, the nuclear family, actually, that is going to result in violence against Black people. The point is that all of this stuff, all these lies, it's custom tailored. It's brilliantly engineered. They got a lot of these ideas from advertising. So these methods have been in circulation a long time. In fact, I was just reading, it was actually through Mark Dice, and he referenced this, that actually De Beers jewels, the idea that you need a diamond ring for an engagement, that idea was invented by a media mogul, and it was his goal to do that. De Beers asked him to see if they could make it.
Wait a minute, are you telling me that women have... It hasn't been the standard practice to buy a woman a diamond?
Not surprised. Engagement? How am I not surprised?
No, I'm going to talk to my wife.
Once again, we are being manipulated by women and fall under the feminist bull crap.
Okay, wait. It was a man. It was a man in this case.
That was a man.
Well, most feminist propaganda has been started by men anyway.
That's true. But
I'm going to talk to my wife here.
This guy
needs to be refound.
What Mark Dice presented was at this one. I can't remember what his last name was. But he was a media tycoon, and it was because of him, in conjunction with working with De Beers. Okay, De Beers, of course, is the South African diamond mogul.
That's who they are, De Beers jeweler?
Yeah, and they started...
They're from South Africa.
They started in South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they had worked with Cecil B. Rhodes. Okay, so Cecil Rhodes was, of course, the great genius behind the railroads.
Rhodes Scholar.
Yep, it all comes from that. Yeah, Cecil B. Rhodes, the great symbol of British imperialism and capitalism.
Yeah,
right? And when he worked to help create De Beers.
The Mason.
Yeah, I'm sure. But anyway, so De Beers basically worked with this media mogul, and he is the one who standardized the idea through advertising commercials that you need to have a diamond ring for a proposal.
I didn't know
that. And but this is a proof that we've all been propagandized.
Yeah.
So my point is that even people who would say that they're immune to brainwashing and propaganda are not. It is a sinister, crafty, devilish system and practice.
And it plays doesn't a large part of propaganda play on emotions?
It plays on emotions, but it does so because the point of propaganda, and this is one of Jacques Ellul's points, is it never calls you to a belief system.
Which book are you reading of Ellul's?
It's called Propaganda.
Oh, I got to get that book. Okay.
Yeah, and the manipulation of men's opinions or something like that.
But anyway.
It's a subtitle.
Yeah, it never calls, basically what I was saying, never calls you to a rational thought process.
No.
It calls you to reaction.
Yes, because they want you to act. And by getting you to act in a certain way, if those actions are in conformity with the goals of the political party who is putting out the propaganda, they're actually getting you closer to being fully integrated into that system.
That's right.
Now, so
the whole idea of a diamond is forever is propaganda. That's what it was.
Well, it's a kind of propaganda.
It's a kind of propaganda.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day is also propaganda.
Well, and all this stuff.
Don't even get me started on Valentine's Day.
Well, we could actually.
Talk to me about that when you're married.
Yeah, but this materialism.
Oh, I will. Believe me.
This materialism, though, is
just make every day Valentine's Day.
Oh,
and then Valentine's Day, you can do something else.
Okay. Anyway,
there's only one person around here who can make every day Valentine's Day, and that's Josh. Look how many kids he has.
Anyway. Wow.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't want to know what that means. We're gonna walk away from that comment.
Oh my gosh. Master!
I'm sorry, but it was out there. I had to jump on it. Yeah. Look at him over there, winking his eyes and smiling. No,
the Johnson household, where every day is Valentine's Day.
Anyway, go ahead, John. Continue embarrassedly.
So, with propaganda.
Yes, we've been propagandizing Josh. Yes.
Are you enjoying yourself over there?
Oh, yeah, tremendously.
I noticed you took your shirt off.
Wow, John Michael.
And John Michael's like, is it getting hot?
It's quite warm.
Me?
John Michael, are those really,
I'm always hot, so
are those really hairs on your chest?
Constantly. What? Oh, I'll take it all off. You want me to?
Oh, boy. People want to walk in on this podcast, have questions.
Anyway, you were saying about propaganda.
It's beefsteak time with John Michael.
Beefsteak time. What? Wow. Okay.
Anyway, back to
I don't know, but anyway,
propaganda.
The propaganda point was is that we're being inundated, and the new Marxism, right? The neo-Marxist stuff. It's custom tailored to propaganda because anytime we speak about it in criticism, we've granted it because it's not rational propositions or questions of inquiry. They're statements, they're sloganeering. So anytime they present that as a system, we as rational people attempt to respond to that with debate or analysis. But anytime we do that, we give some credence
to what they're saying. That's right.
When there's no real substance to it anyway.
That's right.
So, for instance,
that's right.
We discussed, like when we discussed Black Lives Matter, we've already given credence to some of the points. And to be honest, they're already expecting that people...
No, I haven't given credence to any.
Well, I'll give you an example. Some people, people will qualify certain things. Like, I'll give you an example. When you bring up Black Lives Matter, you'll say something like, say, all lives matter. But what you've done is you've kind of put part of their slogan already into your slogan.
I agree.
And not only that, but then if you qualify it with it and you say, well, of course I believe all Black lives matter. You've already played into that again. If you say, well, I believe in the wrongs of slavery and that we need to correct them. Okay, you bought into it again. Anytime you accept any one of their presuppositions.
No, I don't accept any of them.
Sometimes they expect you to.
I don't accept any of them.
And then how do you properly respond then though
you properly respond to Black Lives Matter by saying that's nonsense. That's just just factual nonsense.
But they're going to have
because the thing is that we're looking at things from God's point of view.
Yeah.
God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. He didn't create them black. He didn't create them Chinese.
So it's not Black Lives Matter.
It doesn't matter about any of that stuff.
Human.
Mankind. Mankind is created in the image of God. And that's it.
That's it. Period.
And we are sinners. We've fallen into sin, and we need to repent.
Yeah, and I would say that we shouldn't respond to the propaganda. We should respond to the ideology behind the propaganda. So
we did there?
Okay. So, I'll give you an example. Like when it says on Black Lives Matter site, the abolition of the nuclear family. Now we're getting into propositions of what we believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you get into things, so when you attack Black Lives Matters, I think acronyms are good. When you refer to them like BLM, I think that actually does diminish them a little bit. But when you refer to them like with an acronym, like the BLM says this, and then you say, well, this is their stated beliefs, and then here's the critique of their stated beliefs. Okay, so at that point, you're dealing, like I said, you are dealing with stuff of a rational level. But see, what's smart about these neo-Marxists is that they're kind of embedding that, as burying that as much as they can, so that it's free from being scrutinized properly. Because when you attack their sloganeering, you're falling into their trap. So if you attack the Me Too movement, okay, and when you attack the Me Too movement on the basis of the Me Too aspect or on the face allegations, like you're approaching this incorrectly. Right. What you rather need to attack with the Me Too movement is say, what's a biblical definition of rape? What is a biblical approach to rape? What are these women saying they actually did?
Right.
And what were they actually victims of something? Because I would say a lot of times they weren't. So if your boss says, first of all, half these women didn't have enough self-respect. Okay, first of all, it's not the end of the world if you don't make it as an actress in Hollywood, and a lot of people have not made it as actresses in Hollywood and have done quite well with their lives, even in spite of trying. But if you're going to be an actress in Hollywood and your boss asks you to give him a blowjob or whatever, don't do it. It doesn't matter if he says that you're not going to get the part. And so when you do it, and then 20 years later you call in and you say, okay, my boss
made me do this. Or made me do that.
To be honest, I don't think that should be regarded as rape.
No.
It shouldn't be
no.
rape. And it's a
no.
Basically, you just consented to
you can't go back in time and change the
statute limitations make sense. And
I'm not talking about the statute of limitations. I'm just talking about your morality for going back in time and trying to reimagine a situation into what you wanted it to be. Yeah. The fact of the matter is that when you sat on that casting couch, you chose to do that.
Yes, I would agree.
So would it be correct? Would it be correct to say that what you're saying can be summed up with a statement such as "Don't judge a book by its cover"?
Well, with propaganda, you mean?
Yeah, basically what you're with the slogans, because you can, like, for instance, you have a book and you have the title of the book, and you could say, oh, well, this is what this appears to be, but you haven't opened up the cover. You haven't even read the contents to see what's in it, to see what it's actually saying. Like, so if you put, you have a book entitled Black Lives Matter. Well, then you instead of opening up the table of contents and seeing what is in this book and what it entails, we want to abolish the family. We want to, do this. You just deal with the title of the book. Don't do that. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Open it up and read it. But there's two types of propaganda: political and sociological propaganda. Now, sociological propaganda is far more pervasive, and the two used to be more distinct. But now, with the politicization of everything in our society, from football to food, because of that politicization, the two distinctions are no longer as important: the sociological versus political propaganda, because now they're basically the same. But one of the distinctive qualities of sociological propaganda is that it wants you to form certain assumptions of what your life should be as an American at this time period. So, for instance, when you see a commercial and it depicts, let's say, a man and a woman both working outside the home, and they have, let's say, some adopted kids, or maybe they don't have any kids and they just have pets. Okay,
this is what normal life. It wants you to tell you. It's basically telling you this is what normal life is to look like.
Correct, and that's when I gave you the example of how advertising promoted the diamond engagement ring. Okay, it's the same concept. You see. Basically just commercials for De Beers diamonds, let's say. And you see pictures of men getting on their knees and proposing like it's normal, even if it wasn't normal. Yeah. And some people, see that, us schmucks, right? We're watching TV in the 1950s or something, and we see that, and we're like, oh, yeah, well, of course. I'm going to go down right now to the jeweler's. I'm going to get my girl a diamond ring. If that
on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, whatever, exactly. But the thing is, they do this all the time, and then if you pay attention, you can see how they move the needle. If you look, let's say, at 1960s or maybe late 1960s, you see commercials. They're still promoting mom at home. Dad's the primary breadwinner. Kids are, they get their toys at Christmas. Whatever the moral fabric of the society was in common at that time, that's depicted in the commercials, but the commercials have always been moving people into a certain direction of how whoever's making this propaganda envisions we should be like. But notice how they're doing it. They're making us more consumerist. They're making us more decadent, hedonistic, materialistic, dependent upon science. Science is used in commercials a lot as the benchmark for determining whether a product is good or not, or whether it's good for you or in your society.
And they're also making us cheap too.
Yeah, whatever the example is. But the point is that this is another example of propaganda. It is calling you to action, right? Because this is one of the things that all propaganda has in common. It's not meant to make you believe anything. It's meant to call you to action. So when you see a laundry detergent commercial, dedicated to whatever.
Oh, it's so fluffy.
The target. Yeah, whatever.
Wait a minute. Are you criticizing soap operas now?
I'll criticize them too.
Stop it.
But
wait. Don't tell me you're a soap opera person.
Oh, I loved As the
Oh,
World Turns.
gosh.
Oh, no.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. What?
I love The Guiding Light. Stop it.
The guiding light.
Stop
what?
it. Stop it.
Where is it guiding you?
Stop it.
Oh.
You guys.
Where's the guiding light guiding you?
Gay bar.
Hey, can
To
I
the bedroom?
No, I'm just kidding here. Can I break in?
This guy you to the gay bar.
Can I break in? We can.
The guiding
we
light.
Can, we can pursue this subject of propaganda the whole evening, but can I? There's two things I wanted to get to tonight.
Sure.
And this came in at the last minute here, but I also want to get into voting. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
But the first thing I just want to get you guys' viewpoints about this, because going over the past couple of podcasts, we've been talking about paganism, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get you guys, because I'm thinking about a book here, okay? And I want you to give me your feedback, okay?
Okay.
We're talking about paganism,
Yeah.
okay? Now, we've talked about it as far as 3 pillars, and I think I'm going to change the 3 pillars here. Not much, but a little. And I just want to get you guys' feedback, because this might help me with regards to my book.
Okay.
Okay.
Your book that you're gonna write, or
I'm
that
going to
you're
write a book on. I want to write a book on Babylon.
Oh,
That's what I
okay.
want to write. Is a book on Babylon.
All right.
Okay, paganism, and paganism is to be equated with Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Paganism. Okay, we've talked about paganism in terms of child sacrifice. I don't think that the paganism. I think that's too narrow. I think that paganism is not so much a culture of child sacrifices as it is a culture of human sacrifice.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
You want to elaborate?
Sure.
You want to talk about that? I think it's human sacrifice in the.
Correct.
Let me tell you what's in
We
my
would say,
mind
but
here.
it starts with child sacrifice because.
Well, no, I don't think it does. I think it starts with human sacrifice. I think this is your religion. I think that the religion in paganism is human sacrifice, whether it be children, or whether it be male, or whether it be female.
Yeah.
Or it's just a deterioration of mankind.
It's a broader
it's a
broad
broad
term.
category.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, paganism is a culture of human sacrifice.
I mean, certainly children are human.
Yeah,
so
human
I'm fine.
sacrifice.
I don't have a problem
When
with
you're
that.
talking about transgenderism, you're sacrificing your maleness.
Oh, that's a good point.
You're sacrificing your femaleness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're talking about homosexuality, you're sacrificing having a wife.
your maleness.
You're sacrificing your maleness.
But it's not just a symbolic thing. Okay, so like with
I'm not. I didn't say symbolic.
Yeah, but when I say that homosexuality is child sacrifice. Specifically child sacrifice. It's because
I agree with you. Don't get me wrong.
The homosexual act is anti-procreative and therefore murderous.
It's anti-procreative. Yeah, but when I say anti-sacrifice, I'm talking about human sacrifice. I'm talking about a religion of human sacrifice.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a religion of what amounts to idolatry. The first commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, with all of thy mind, to not have any other idols before myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And when you're talking about homosexuality and so on and so forth, you are the image of God. What this human sacrifice does is basically it tears away at the image of God in mankind.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
I agree.
Okay, this culture, let me get your feedback on this. This culture is maintained by the social contract.
Yeah, I agree.
And agree what the social contract is that that this system, this paganism, seeks to have buy-in from everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
forced or unforced.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Social contract.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that is your and your governments are devised on that basis.
Yes.
Your governments are devised on that basis.
Correct.
All secular pagan governments are formed on the basis of the social contract.
Yeah. Social contract. Okay.
To, for, and by the people.
Mm-hmm.
And this paganism is committed to what is right in your own eyes.
Correct.
Moral relativism, but I would say stemming from the reason I say scientific naturalism and the worship of nature as that other pillar, because the three pillars were scientific.
No, I'm not disagreeing with what you said.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get them together here in a general construct here. Go ahead.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say moral relativism was inevitable. Because ultimately you cannot derive moral standards from nature. Because what is scientific naturalism, right? The worship of nature, like one of the things I said. So what's that mean with the worship of nature? You look at these things that you observe, the created things, and you ascribe to them powers that belong to the creator who is unseen. Okay, that is the inversion of the providential order that leads to basically this naturalistic worldview that went from deism to atheism in like 100 years. Now, that system of thought, okay, scientific naturalism, the reason it leads to moral relativism stems onto a similar fallacy that they've already been guilty of. We brought this up before, the cum hoc, post hoc fallacies, where they infer causes from things that are observed, which is an error. You can't look at two things in reaction to each other or in sequence and infer causes. Well, ethics works the same way. You cannot infer obligation from observation. What that means is if I observe two people, let's say I observe a man forcing a woman to have sex with him. Okay, observe this. I cannot infer from that any moral claim. So if I observe this, let's say I wasn't a Christian or anything like that. I just observe conduct. I observe people doing things. If I observe a man doing harm to a woman, I can't infer from the mere observation of that fact any moral obligation on anybody, because an obligation does not follow from observation. They don't work together. The conclusion cannot follow from the premise. They're not related. They're disjunctive. So when you understand that they're not related that way, you see that this pagan system cannot come with an ethic. So it's only a matter of time that it leads to moral relativism. Interestingly enough, before we led to this postmodern moral relativism, which now leads to a new Puritanism with this whole Marxism that we're seeing right now, this neo-Marxism is very puritanical. They always monitoring what you can say, what you can do, But the reason it did that is because there was no moral standards for a little while. We were in this postmodern happy zone from the 90s on.
Gray area.
Yeah, where people are like, oh yeah, it's all in the eye of the beholder. There's nothing right or wrong.
Let man do what's right in his own eyes.
That can never last because there has to be authority to have civilizational structure. And the communists know this too, and they're willing to provide it with their Marxist agenda.
Oh, yeah.
But even prior to that, scientific naturalism, it preceded moral relativism because of utilitarianism. So that's the step. How do you get from scientific naturalism to what we're at now with this Marxist takeover? Basically, scientific naturalism attempted a scientific explanation for human morality, usually either utilitarianism or egoism, which basically argue that pleasure and pain are the primary basis for determining what's right and wrong. So if something is more pleasurable for the more people, that act is morally good. So if it's greatest good for the greatest number, defined in terms of pleasure, that is a moral action. The contrary to that would be an immoral action. Obviously, you can't quantify that. There was a lot of philosophical problems with utilitarian ethics, besides the fact that you can't infer the is-ought problem that David Hume brought up. You cannot infer ought from is, action or obligation from observation. That's the main fallacy that kills it. And so basically from there, postmodernism was accepted. They're like, okay, well, science hasn't brought us to morality. Science is indifferent to morality, therefore, thus moral relativism.
Just do whatever.
And then because moral relativism does not work, well, now they've instituted moral tyranny with this new Marxism that we're seeing right now with the social justice system.
Yeah, and that's a social contract. And the social contract is everybody accepts it whether you are voluntarily doing it or you're forced to do it.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Typically, it's not voluntary. It's usually manipulated or coerced. Like propaganda kind of goes hand in hand with democracy.
Yeah.
Democracies have their own propaganda. Communists have their own propaganda. Fascists have their own propaganda. You need propaganda to keep a population committed to a contract that they never signed, that they never agreed to. How do you get people to go along with a system to which they never consented? It's through propaganda. It's by when they see this sociological propaganda in advertisements and commercials, they're like, okay, this is what I am expected to do. I'm expected to get a house with a white picket fence and a manicured yard with one wife who works outside the home, maybe 2 kids, one of them probably adopted, who will probably grow up to be gay, and that's okay. Like that vision of American society is what people accept. They're born into this society. They never consented to its rules or its laws or its form of government or any of that stuff. They're born into this.
What was interesting about our country
sure.
is that there was a time where there were actually 2 completely different societies in one country, before the Civil War. And I think a big part of the Civil War was the fact that there were two societies that were, in a great sense, contrary to one another, that were living.
You're referring to antebellum South and like the industrial North.
Yeah. Yeah, the South and the North.
Yeah, there was at least 2 societies, but you also had like the blacks, and then you had the Native Americans.
No, but what I mean is two major societies.
Okay, sure.
2 major societies, the South and the North.
Don't get me and Josh going on this.
No, I'm just saying that what's unique about our country is that at one point, and which is why we had a civil war, is that at one point there were 2 cultures that were separate. And then after the Civil War, it basically, they still kind of are separate, but they're more, I think you could say now that they're more intermingled.
Sure, and
than they were.
And your application would be for regarding our current time that we're separated again.
What's that?
You would say the application of that point is that we're separated again.
I don't really think we're separated culturally.
Okay, well,
I'm just saying the application was that if you look at the history of our country, maybe what has led to the spread of propaganda not being so great, and the corruption of our nation taking longer than other countries, than other republics and other democracies, is because of the independence of the states, the different understandings of government, the different cultures that were at the beginning of our country.
Well, it's easier to propagandize when you don't have a free press. So this is where we're going.
Yeah, and I was about to say that. Aren't we talking about here the same thing we were talking about before? I'm just saying there's some assumptions there that you're making that aren't necessarily true. First of all,
what's that?
That our country hasn't recovered. That is not true. Well, our country is not divided today on the basis of black and white. It isn't divided today on
that's not what I was saying.
Okay.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying is that all I was saying is that at one point in our country,
you said had something to the
there was
extent,
2 completely different cultures. There was 2 completely different cultures that were living under the umbrella of one nation,
North and South.
There were 2 completely different.
Right. Okay.
So societies really that had completely different.
Okay, I'll assent to that. I agree
look
with that.
on government, on life. Obviously, if the South believed that they could secede from, that it was okay for them to secede from the United States.
That's what I.
No state would. What state today would say that it's okay for us to secede?
Nobody would.
Maybe Texas would.
Well, no, I don't.
Well, I think that attitude's changing.
Yeah, it's starting to change. Sure, it's starting to change.
I think it's changing fast because I think a lot of states right now. I think if this political situation gets much worse, I think you're going to have state legislatures voting on secession.
And I would say it's getting to the point where now you see 2 cultures are developing.
Even in Pennsylvania, you're going to see a secession because most of the Most of the state is,
but it's
not
for different reasons. It's not like
not progressive.
It's not like you have two completely different cultures that are living in the same state. It's almost like you have one culture or one society, and because one political party is becoming so extreme, there is a separation that's occurring.
Mm-hmm. Well, in any case,
ideological separation that is occurring.
Agreed.
In any case, let's move on. The thing is that this is definitely a subject. The Civil War is a subject that we need to have another day. We've talked about this. We've had we've had talks about this.
Well, it's just interesting. It's interesting from several.
But we got to wind up here sometime.
Historical perspective.
Yeah,
it's interesting from several perspectives.
But the reason why I brought up, like I said before, is I'm talking about paganism. And this is I'm deeply my interest at this point in time is deeply entrenched in the history and the way paganism works itself out. And in my opinion, I relate all of this to what Babylon in Scripture.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Babylon forms a beginning and the end. And I'm just going to read this and then we're going to move on.
Okay.
The thing is that Babylon started in chapter 11 of Genesis.
Tower of Babel.
The Tower of Babel, when the whole earth was of one language. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And then they started working together to make things, to build things, and so on and so forth. And they said, let us build ourselves a city and a tower which top reaches into heaven. And this was all in defiance of God, is what it was.
Yeah.
And God come down, as you know, and ruined that situation and sent them all out into different parts of the earth. And then in Revelation chapter 17... there's this thing about the fall of Babylon. It says in Revelation chapter 18 verse 2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And all of that came to an end right there. Babylon the Great is fallen. That's, in my opinion, that's what paganism is. Paganism is that alternate religion out there that's been competing with Christianity forever.
Yeah.
Babylon, it's not so much a religion. The religion, I believe, in paganism is a culture of human sacrifice. Mm-hmm. That's what the religion of Babylon is a culture of human sacrifice. Yeah. But Babylon is a place where everybody is committed to doing what is right in their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately,
except that phrase, everybody did what was right in his own eyes, is a phrase that was used in the time of Judges to refer to a generally stateless system. But
not necessarily. It was used to refer to a time where nobody was abiding by the law of God. They were just doing whatever they thought that was right.
That's true, but under the time of Judges, there wasn't a king in Israel. In fact, normally when that phrase is introduced, everybody did what was right in his own eyes. It starts out by saying, in those days, there was no king over Israel, and everybody did what was right in his own eyes.
Well, the assumption there also, but the assumption...
In other words, God...
But the biggest...
It is that... What's being said there is that God wasn't the king.
That's right. That was the biggest assumption, is there was no king in Israel because they did not recognize God as their king.
Whenever God isn't the king, then you're actually living in Babylon.
Correct.
Yeah, and look how they sought to solve that problem. They wanted a king like the nations. When all they had to do was go back to the covenant.
Just submit to God as their king.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on. The thing is that here's what I wanted to really discuss tonight is that the thing is that we talked about this earlier. We got to in the church. There's this thing about you shouldn't get political, But in my opinion, and I think you guys as too, we disagree with that sentiment entirely.
Separation of church and state.
There is no separation of church and state. The church, the state exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to provide peace in the culture for the church to operate. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I think we need to talk about what separation of church and state really means. Separation of church and state was never meant to keep the church out of the state.
Right.
In any way, or for the church not to have any influence over the state. Separation of church and state was meant for the state to have no influence over the church, because these people were coming out of England where the state was the church.
Okay,
the
John.
state, the king in England basically was the head of the church, and these people were, the Puritans. They were coming out of England, and they said, we want to start a new country. We want to start our own society where there's freedom of worship, where we're not being coerced by the state to worship in a certain way. And that's where the term separation of church and state comes into play.
Except the Puritans didn't entirely believe that, because when you had people, let's say Baptists, like the Baptists who founded Rhode Island, preaching that only adults who profess the faith should be baptized, they tarred and feathered him and chased him out of town.
Wasn't Roger
So they didn't necessarily believe in the separation of church and state in that sense. In fact, the phrase separation of church and state isn't even in our Constitution.
That's correct.
It says that Congress shall make no law.
Comes from Jefferson, doesn't it?
Correct. Well, in the actual Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, it says that Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of religion.
Yeah.
The Establishment Clause. And all that really means is that the federal government will not establish a national church. In fact, at the time, it seemed that the states understood and reserved the right unto themselves to establish their own churches in their own states. In fact,
That's true.
certain states at the time, the colonies had established churches, like the Church of England, as an example, as their actual.
But there was no king over them coercing them to do that.
Correct, because this was meant to be a voluntary alliance between colonies in defiance of English taxation.
And if you lived in that state. What I'm saying basically applies, because if you lived in that state, you were basically agreeing to that kind of church.
Correct.
If you lived in a state where the church was, where there was an established church, you were basically agreeing to live in that state. You didn't have to. You could leave and you could go someplace else where the church that you wanted to worship was where it was being it was established,
like in Maryland. Okay, the reason
Catholic.
It was Catholic. Okay,
Correct.
And so you could go
Correct.
if you want to be Catholic, you could go to Maryland, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to be a Quaker, I guess you could go to Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania
Yeah.
was, because it was founded by Quakers, was very free in that regard. You could go to Virginia, which is principally Anglican. You could have gone to Massachusetts, which had been principally Congregationalist. You have all these different examples of things.
No overarching authority is going to tell us how we are going to govern ourselves, basically, was the idea.
And that brings us to what I wanted to talk about tonight, and that is Christian voting. You said no overarching authority should what?
What's that?
No overarching authority should what? You said no overarching authority should tell us.
He forgot already. Look at him.
To tell us,
starry-eyed dog.
To tell us who to vote for?
Well, that's what I'm going to get to. No overarching authority should tell us how we are to live our lives. Can we agree on that?
Well, the church.
The only one is the church.
The church
but
tell us how to live.
Yeah, but he was quoting you regarding no overarching authority establishing a state church.
Yeah, establishing a state church.
There's no overarching authority, government authority that establishes us, that is establishing or telling people how this is the church that you need to worship at.
And which brings me to what we have first and foremost on our minds here during these days, and that's
the election,
upcoming election.
Yeah.
Okay.
November 3rd. Mark it on your calendar.
What I want to
we have podcasts that night.
Yeah, we're gonna be out there.
No.
Yeah, that's.
We need to do a live podcast.
No.
Do we need to do a live stream? Do we need to do a live stream? A live stream?
Oh.
Can we plan on a live stream?
No.
Yeah. Can we?
Maybe.
Huh?
Maybe.
Let's do a live stream.
We'll see what we can come up with.
See what we can come up with.
But I'm not gonna. I'm gonna
That'd be
be
a
up
long
all
night.
night. I'm gonna be up all night anyway.
It'd be
Hey,
a long night.
I'm gonna be up all night. We're gonna be up all night anyway. Don't lie. Be honest.
But the thing is that the thing is, I'm gonna make a confession here. My name is Pastor Ken Zitch, and when I'm up in front of the congregation on Sunday, I can't tell people how to vote. I can't do that, and doesn't have anything to do with the government. It has to do with my congregation. I can't alienate members of my congregation that don't immediately see what they should see. So, but in any case, here I am doing a podcast, and I'm perfectly free to say whatever I want to here. Okay,
come out. You can come out with it all
I
here.
can
All your
come out.
dirty laundry.
all the dirty laundry, and I'm here to tell you.
Valentine's Day.
I'm here to tell you tonight. I'm here to tell you this evening that you can't vote for Democrats if you're a Christian.
Ooh.
Okay, you cannot vote for a Democrat if you're a Christian.
Ooh.
Okay, and
Boom.
And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through their platform real quick. We're going to go through their platform.
Laying it down.
And I'm going to lay it
Lay
down.
the smacketh downeth.
Back down, and I want you guys. Here's what I want. Here's what I want to do with this. I want you to look at these things, to hear these things as I repeat them.
Go ahead.
This is the Democratic Party platform,
Yeah.
and what I ask of you tonight is
Yeah.
that you simply respond biblically. Biblically,
Okay.
Not
Oh boy.
not out of your own emotions, which John Michael is apt to do. We don't want any emotionalism here. We want biblicism.
Okay.
here. Biblicism.
All right.
You must respond. If you want my Bible, I'll loan it to you.
Sure. I can think of a few choice words from the Bible too.
Okay. Okay. You can. I want to go through their platform, and I want you to tell everybody who's out there listening tonight this when they hear this podcast.
Yeah.
I want you to tell them why they cannot vote Democrat.
Go ahead.
Whatever, all Christians.
Like I said, I can say what I want to here. I'm not
Yeah.
standing before the church here tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
here we go.
Proceed.
Go ahead. Boom.
sir.
Proceed. Okay.
Let's go.
Proceed,
Now
sir.
we've already talked about the coronavirus pandemic. This is in
Yeah.
their platform.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's understand that. Let me focus in on this. Democrats also support free coronavirus testing and treatment for everyone, as well as free vaccines when they become available.
Nothing's
And they
free.
want to
boy.
expand sick leave and unemployment insurance to help workers impacted by the health crisis. Now, I ask you too, what is wrong with that?
Well, you're also stealing from employers because the employers are the ones that are going to have to pay for all that.
Yeah. What about the people that are working during this time?
Okay.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
you're stealing from them.
You're stealing from
I mean, because you gotta get money to pay the people that aren't working.
when you're talking about expanded unemployment insurance, you're
Yeah.
talking about taking from other people.
Well, that's just socialism right there.
That's
That's all
social-
that. That's all that is right there.
Okay,
You
now
know,
what? Let's talk about
it's-
that real quick. What's wrong
Yeah.
with socialism?
What's wrong with socialism?
Yeah, I know
You're
you got.
taking-
I'm not insulting your intelligence.
No. It's still.
I want you to tell
what's
them
wrong with socialism.
What's wrong
is
with socialism?
You're taking money from people and you're giving it to other. You're taking money. You know, socialism would be like, you know, me going over to Josh's house, taking all his groceries, and
You do that all
every
the time.
you visit.
Josh,
No, I don't.
you do that every day.
going to Josh's house, taking all his milk, taking all the
Eating me out of house and home.
taking the clothes off his back, and
Yeah.
and
He has done
and then
that.
going
I know
giving
he
it
has.
to what?
Well, not just off my back, off other places. But go ahead.
But go ahead.
Oh, come on.
We won't do that.
Not at your house.
We won't.
Go ahead.
And
Or
then giving
dorm.
it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's what the government does with these programs.
Okay, biblically though, I would say Naboth's vineyard would be one of the passages you go to.
It's a violation of the commandment.
Let Naboth's
It's stealing.
Let's go. Let it hear about Naboth's vineyard.
Well, Naboth vineyard is the
Yeah.
example of where
Ahab.
he coveted the vineyard of I can't remember what his name is right off the text, but basically
Naboth.
Yeah, that's right.
Ahab coveted
King Ahab and Naboth's vineyard.
Ahab coveted Naboth's vineyard.
Correct.
And then he said, and his wife was like,
Jezebel
told him, why are you moping around? Oh, because I want this, but it's his, and I can't take it. And Jezebel said to him, well, who cares? Just go and take it anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and remember, Naboth's justification was that there was an inheritance from the Lord.
Yeah.
For his family and for his ancestors, right?
Yeah.
So basically, Naboth's appealing to the fact that his property rights, and that basically Ahab did not have the right to seize and take that land for himself. Now, this was a warning that God had given in 1 Samuel 8 that kings would do this. Okay, they would do this. They would take your land. They would do these things. But it's a warning because it's a sign of oppressive governance. So, for instance, taxation. The tax rates that are being proposed by the Democrats are insane. And basically, God says in the Bible that anything above 10% by a state would be tyranny.
I heard that. Let me say that. Let me say this. I heard that earlier today. I was watching A.D. Robles on the on podcast, and he said that anything above 10%, the government asking for anything above 10% is tyranny.
Yeah, because it's more than what God would ask.
Because God asked for 10%.
Yeah, that's the rationale. Is because it's more than the tithe.
Yeah.
If God's asking you for 10%,
no one has the right to ask.
No one has the right to ask for any more.
Yeah, and that's basic. Yeah, and that would be correct because God gets the best.
Yeah.
So, and if the best is 10%, then there's nothing better, and anything that would be better is tyrannical.
Right.
But these programs, basically, what you're telling, a person that's a hardworking American, for instance, when I was doing pizza delivery, living in Pittsburgh, and I would get off work and after fill up my car with gas and come to the gas station and see all these people that gotten their welfare checks and were getting candy and cigarettes and other things with their welfare checks. That's basically my money that's being redistributed to them so they don't have to work.
All those pizzas in vain.
What?
All those pizzas in vain to pay for welfare.
Yeah.
And
they're buying pizza too with my money.
For the brothers in the
They're
hood.
buying pizza from me as I'm delivering it to them, and they don't pay me any tip. How bad is that?
I remember.
I
remember.
They don't give me any change. They just give me the change. Here's the change.
Nice.
Like 30 cents.
I used to deliver pizzas too when I was in college, and that's what I got.
Back before there was cars.
Yeah. Don't go there.
But
don't go. That's unfair.
But basically, the principle here. Listen,
me, and I don't like
the principle here is you are teaching people not to. What does the Bible say?
I owe silver. Let's go.
I owe silver.
Wait.
Let's get back. Some pizza delivered silver.
Let's get back. Let's get back.
Okay,
let's get back to what the government. The Bible says if you're not going to work, then you're not going to eat.
That's right.
So if you're telling people that you don't have to work and we're going to give stuff to you because we're going to take it from some other people from other people, it's not biblical. The Bible teaches personal responsibility, and if you are taking welfare, you're taking money from the government and you're not working at all, then you're basically stealing money from other people. Okay, and you're not being personally responsible. You're becoming more and more dependent upon the government to give you, to provide for you, to give you what you need, and you're also taking money from other people. It's not wrong.
Well,
it's not right.
Well,
it's wrong.
let's.
Yeah, but Jesus was a communist.
No, he wasn't.
No, listen. Here's a good text that people. You
Oh
can use
my
again.
gosh!
Here's a good argument to something that no socialist would ever say.
Josh is definitely going to make a point here.
The widow
Jesus being a communist.
The widow's mite is a good example that confounds socialists because no socialist would ever say that someone donating that money gave more than all the rest.
That's true.
Okay, because remember,
True.
What does progressive taxation imply?
Yeah, the
Progressive
rich
income
pay
tax.
more.
The rich pay more.
Yeah.
But do you know what Christ says? Christ says that the more that the rich paid wasn't worth as much as that
what
widow.
the widow, she paid one mite.
Do you know why? Because it was voluntary.
Because it was all that it was voluntary.
she had.
It was all that she had.
Yes, but she
all that
gave
she
it
had.
willingly for
She
him.
gave it willingly.
She wasn't
It was all that
coerced.
she had.
Yes.
So it was
And
more
that-
than anyone else.
Yes, and that's the whole thing, because these guys only dedicated a percentage of their riches. But see, Christ doesn't tell you like, hey, oh, by the way, if you're rich, you need to give this money, or if not, I'm going to tell Caesar to come get it from you. That's not what Christ is teaching in the gospel.
No, no.
He's not teaching socialism.
Correct.
He's saying that you are to give freely of your own
Correct.
abundance. And
Listen, if the Bible teaches anything, it teaches capitalism.
of course.
It teaches capitalism.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, going on. Okay, we agree then.
The bottom line is responsibility there.
Well, yeah,
You know?
responsibility, and let me say something about that. The thing is that responsibility means in this time of the coronavirus pandemic, you need to take care of your own health. You need to make sure that you do things that you're supposed to do with regards to not getting sick, and so on and so forth. The coronavirus isn't something that's just floating around the air and that you're helpless and there's nothing that you can do to contract it. You need to do what you need to do like any other cold and flu season to make sure that you don't get sick.
Vitamin C.
Vitamin
I'm not
C.
saying, and listen,
Vitamin C.
I'm not saying don't take.
Zinc.
I'm not saying if your business shuts, if your
Vitamin D.
who you're working for, your employer shuts down for a couple months, that you shouldn't take unemployment benefits.
That's okay.
But you need to realize that you're not
You're
dependent
not-
upon these unemployment benefits.
That isn't your right.
You need to go back to work as soon as possible for you to do so.
That isn't your right.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, now the next thing, and again, let's get back to what we're talking about here. The
Democratic platform.
Can a Christian vote for Democrats?
Yeah.
Right, continue.
Okay, healthcare. Okay, here's something that I want
Oh,
to pull
boy.
out of their healthcare plank, and I want to get you guys' response to it. Okay, healthcare is a basic human right.
No.
What say you?
It's not.
What say you?
This stuff's so dumb. I don't even know why.
I mean-
I have to answer it. So it's not a human right because
I
it
want
cannot
you to
be
answer
for-
this for the sake
Yeah,
of Christians
so-
out there
okay,
who might
so
be.
healthcare is not a right because it cannot be inferred from plain reason. Okay, so in what sense would I say that health is a right? I would say that the ability to medicate oneself and to provide for one's own life is a right, because there's three primary natural rights: life, liberty, and property. Our founding documents call it life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the only reason Jefferson wrote pursuit of happiness was because he wanted to differentiate property in the vulgar sense, like, plain possessions or like property, versus the basic, that which you have that becomes yours through the free exercise of your liberty. So when he says the pursuit of happiness, he's referring to not just vulgar property in terms of, like, let's say your land you live on, but also all of that which is created by your labor in liberty for whatever goal or dream you have undertaken to pursue. He wants to encompass all of that so there was no ambiguity. But the problem is it became more ambiguous because people, if he had said property, it would have saved us a lot of grief, 200 and some years later. That being said, there's only three rights: life, liberty, and property. Healthcare is not a right. It's not a right because what they mean that healthcare is a right is they mean that you have the right to someone else's money for your healthcare. Okay, because
Right.
the healthcare they're referring to is state subsidized, in
That's
which the
good.
money and the
That's
taxation exacted for that comes from other citizens
Right.
against their will.
Right.
And if they don't pay those taxes to pay for your healthcare, they will be punished. That is the immorality of it. It's immoral because other people are being coerced to pay for your medical expenses against their will under the threat of violence or fines. So that is why it's immoral and why it's not a right. Now, when I say you have the right to life, now this gets into more controversy. I'm a right libertarian, so I am against prohibiting any kind of drugs for any reason. Now, my main reason for this is that if there's anything out there, whether it's legal or illegal currently under our current system, if it's going to aid you in your health, that is to take care of yourself, and if you can grow it yourself or use it yourself or manufacture it yourself, I think that is a right, because when you have the right to life, you have the right to perpetuate your own life and to provide for your own means to survive. This goes down to building a house or hunting or whatever, is that those means which are necessary and natural to the provision of the right, life, liberty, or property, those things are to be retained by the people. So if you have the right to, so instead of saying a right to health care, I simply say you have the right to life. And just in virtue of having a right to life, you have the right to certain medicines. And in fact, I would say that you have more of a right to those medicines than most people in either political party, because I would say that implies that you have the absolute right to grow or manufacture or produce medicines yourself for your own health. Something that, generally speaking, is pretty illegal, not only in this country, but in many countries. They don't want you to be able to medicate yourself and take care of your own health. They want you to be dependent upon a state-sanctioned system so that they can tell you that, hey, unless you stop going to church, you're not going to get your insulin.
Josh, put that bong away.
There you go. But anyway, there is
put that bong away.
But just its response again. It comes down
for
to
for those of you who know we don't have a video anymore. There is no bong here. But
there's there's nothing of that going on right now.
There is Johnny Walker Black and plastic cups, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
But we'll go from there.
But for me, it just it comes down to one word, and that is responsibility. Mm-hmm. And the government doesn't want you to be responsible. The Democrats don't want you to be responsible for yourself. They want to tell you what you need to do, instead of leaving it up to you to be responsible, to make the right decisions for your health, for your life, for your family. They want to tell you what you need to do for your family, for your health, for your life.
For the phrase "healthcare is a right" is itself propaganda.
So we need to call them out for being a liar, because what they're talking about when they say as healthcare is a right for all is a lie. What they're saying is that the government will tell you what you need in the way of healthcare.
Yeah,
correct.
That's that.
That's basically it.
Yeah,
and
that's basically it.
It's also saying that you're entitled to something paid for by others. Of course.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah, I left that out. Government is telling you that you need to be prepared to accept what health care we're prepared to give, and that health care will be paid for by someone else, which we have no right.
And think about this.
Technically, they would never say this, but we have no right to be making others to subsidize your health.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Who is this policy? Who is this policy most likely going to be directed to? It's not going to be directed to the rich, because they can get their own health care for themselves because they're rich enough. It's not going to be directed toward the high or middle class, because they're most likely are able to pay for their own healthcare plans. So this agenda, this policy is going to be directed towards the poor, those who are not able to provide for themselves.
Yeah, but I don't like to get into that, because the reason why is because it seems like that we're trying to propagandize the poor and what you really need to do is go to what Josh says. And that is that this whole idea of healthcare.
But who is trying to propagandize the poor?
No. I mean, the idea that
the Democratic Party is trying to propagandize the poor.
They have been.
They
have been. But the thing is we as people who know better, we're not trying to propagandize anybody.
No.
We're just trying to make them understand.
And I'm not saying
that this is wrong.
Yeah,
it's morally wrong.
Listen, I've been poor. I'm not saying it's bad to be poor. I'm just saying
No,
I didn't
say
who is this agenda? Who is this agenda going to be pushed on by the Democratic Party? Who is it going to be pushed on the most? And that's the poor people.
Who's the victim
and so
of this platform?
What the poor people need to do is they need to realize that are not to
They're
give
not,
into.
they're not
to
being
give into.
benefited by this. They're not being benefited.
They're not
by
to give
this.
into this ideology. They're not being benefited by it.
the
And they can't. They live in America. They are responsible. Number one, they're responsible to take care of themselves. And they have the freedom and the ability to advance. I've heard so many stories where, people were basically broke, all right, and they didn't have a dime to their name, and they built themselves up to a point where they became a millionaire in America. Yeah. You can make it. You can make it happen. Okay, it just takes hard work, ingenuity. Being responsible for yourself, you can.
But here's another thing
do
too.
This.
Here's another thing too. If you're poor and you're finding yourself in a time of medical need, there's people out there who are going to help you.
Yeah, but do you understand?
That's right.
They're going to help.
Especially if you're a Christian. I have a
problem with this use of the word poor in this context.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll give you one example. Okay. First of all, the way we understand the word poor is no longer historically relevant in the sense of our current context. And
no, in America, we're not poor.
I'll give you an example.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The poorest people in the United States
agree with you
are
there.
the most likely to be obese in the United States.
I agree with you there.
The poorest people in the United States. Hold on a second.
That's because they've given into those government policies, and they're buying that food is not healthy for them, and they're indulging themselves. That's why they're obese.
No,
Subsidized
the poorest
sugar and flour, food stamps, and fast food.
The poorest people who are
they're
poor
obese.
are like those that I saw living out in Los Angeles when me and my wife went out there to visit. And they're living up there on bridges and they're collecting welfare. And the fact of the matter is they're not lacking nothing.
Yeah, sure.
So
agreed.
Go
well, that goes back to the obesity point. Is that we live in a time, like if you were to go to the Romans, right? If you were to go to the Greeks under Alexander, if you were to go to the Persians under Darius, and you were to discuss poor people, the first thing that came to mind for them would not be someone obese living at home.
It would be somebody
to work.
Scrawny. Yeah.
It would be someone who was thin and emaciated, who was working like a slave.
Yeah.
And what that tells us is that what we have for poor in the United States is not the same as poor historically speaking. Right. And further, once again, we were talking about sociological propaganda, going back to Jacques Ellul. Okay, and his point with that is like through advertising. So what are poor taught that they are entitled to through advertising? They're taught through advertising that the standard American way of living, the most acceptable, the normal American way, the way that all Americans should aspire to, is someone who has a certain amount of vehicles, a certain amount of technology, a certain size house, a certain kind of yard, a certain kind of social life.
That's not poor.
Thing is poor people shouldn't be looking at that as a standard anyway.
Poor people have nothing.
They have nothing, but also people.
Well, I wouldn't say they have nothing.
They have nothing.
I would say we need.
I mean, materially speaking, they have nothing.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm saying this is that what our sociological propaganda through advertising has taught is consumerism, so that you need to reach a certain material status to have social worth. But what we should be teaching instead is contentment into the estate in which God has called you.
Right. Exactly.
And so what we do is we say, we tell people, look, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the
kingdom of God.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you look and understand that principle, when you meet someone who does, once again, our poor aren't really poor. So even among us, like I would say that I've lived fairly comfortable. I've had very nice times. I've had a lot of good pleasures in this life. And I've never made over 30,000 a year. And people listening to this podcast who are like from urban centers.
I thought you were pretty rich.
I'm rich in...
That's me.
I'll put it this way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I would say this. I'm rich. When I think of wealth, I try to comport my mind to the biblical idea. So heads of livestock, children around your table, clothes on your back, and
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Okay. Wow. That's all I got to say is wow. Every day is Valentine's Day at the Johnson house. That's why I have so many kids, right?
Household
is that what you're
Valentine's
saying? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I have so many kids.
I didn't say it. He did. Master said it.
Come on, Joy's like, I didn't say Pastor said it. Pastor said a Yale hymn.
The Johnson house is the prototypical example of Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day in action.
Yeah. So you admit it. You admit it. Yes, I like it. I love it. Oh boy,
I want some more of it.
Yes. Good deal.
Okay.
We understand each other now.
All right, that's it. I'm done talking. I'm getting more scotch.
No.
I'm having another round.
Yes.
You two continue.
But
hey, wait. Next point on the Democratic Party platform. We'll
no,
be
the
here till
next
midnight.
point. Okay.
Wait.
Okay. The thing is,
I just want to say something there.
Go ahead. Say it.
But like, yeah, where you were talking about poor, it is being content, but it's not just being content. It's not just being, because a lot of these people that are on welfare, for instance, they could live that way and be content in that situation for years.
That's a good point.
It's not just be content mooching off of other people's money. It's being content in pursuing the calling that God has given you. And as a Christian, God has given you a calling. If you don't know what the calling is that God is giving you, then maybe you need to find that out. But as a Christian, He has given you a calling, and it's being content in pursuing that calling that God has given you, and be responsible for your own welfare and not depending upon other people, the government, not mooching off of them, being responsible for yourself.
Well, I would say when we're talking about contentment, I'm saying being content with what God has given you, not what you have taken from others.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Anyway, with that distinction in mind, I would
let's
say,
be realistic. Being realistic here, let's talk. Let's say that the thing is that when you go back into medieval Europe, people were poor.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
But the thing is, they were happy,
mm-hmm.
and they were happy because of the things that God gave them.
My grandma says
they saw benefit to work. In Western civilization,
read the Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, and you'll know what
in Western civilization, work used to be seen as a good thing, and now we see it as a negative thing. Yeah. Why? Because we're so self-indulgent, we're so given to materialism and entertainment that we've forgotten that the best thing,
those things don't make for human. Those things do not make for human.
The best possible contentment, the best possible enjoyment that we can have is doing that which God has given our hands to do.
Right. Okay, so when we hear the healthcare plank of the Democratic Party saying Democrats believe we need to protect, strengthen, and build upon our bedrock healthcare programs, including the Affordable Care Act, private insurers need real competition to ensure that they have incentive to provide affordable quality coverage to every American. What we say is bunk. That's nonsense. Okay, let's move on to the economy.
Correct.
The economy. The section of the platform that is devoted to the economy blends and borrows ideas from across the Democratic Party's ideological spectrum. There are echoes of Bernie Sanders, the U.S. economy is rigged against the American people, and wonky subsections that address curbing Wall Street abuses and tackling runaway corporate concentration. Issues highlighted repeatedly by Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
What say you about the economy?
We covered that already in the socialist.
Yeah,
I think we should move on.
I think the economy fits into the welfare program that the welfare and other
socialism.
and things socialism that we've been talking about, and it just basically take from the rich because he doesn't really need this money, take it from him and give to the poor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say one more thing, just one thing. On it, and I would say the one word is praxeology, which what that means is the study of human action. So if you look at the study of human action, you can predict economic things. Okay, so I'll give you an example. If you punish somebody, okay, for doing something bad, this is the old carrot and stick routine, right? If you give someone a stick, so to speak, a disincentive for doing something, they're going to do less of that activity.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you incentivize somebody, the carrot, right? they will do more of that activity. Knowing that, understand when you look at the Democrats' approach to the economy, what are they incentivizing and what are they de-incentivizing? So when you look
very
at
good.
So,
very good.
So I'll give you an example.
They're de-incentivizing work.
Let him finish.
Correct.
Let him finish.
Well, no, ultimately, John Michael, you're correct.
Yeah.
But how it plays itself is in particular specific policies. So if you look at, let's say, Lyndon B. Johnson, we know we've discussed this before in the podcast with the war on poverty and the Great Society.
Yeah.
Okay. In that example, right, he said, I want to help single mothers. Okay. This sounds like a Democrat thing. Look at what we just were reading, right? A Democrat thing. We need to help single mothers, gain, a real living wage and enter the middle class. Let's say they said something like that. You can imagine them saying something like that in their typical propaganda sloganeering. Now, if they said something like that and they said, okay, so in order to get single women, single mothers who are struggling into the middle class, what we're going to do is that we're going to give them money. Okay. Now, in order to get this money, you have to be, in fact, a single woman, okay, with children. Now, what are you going to get more of?
Single mothers.
Under praxeology.
You're incentivizing them to be poor, to be single mothers.
Because people are going to say, if I can get money by not being married, then why would I get married? Exactly. And that's why you have the rates of a lack of marriage, right? And you have children being born out of wedlock in such high rates, about 80% now.
Amen.
In the black community, because of what has been incentivized by the government. Now, same thing works for de-incentivization. So what are they regulating and taxing? So, for instance, if you're a small business and they say, well, we're going to increase your OSHA regulations.
Amen.
Okay. We're going to increase the times that you have to be inspected. We're going to make it harder for you to build a house because now you have to pay $30,000 for fees regarding inspectors and code regulations. Are you going to have more people building homes? No.
Of course not.
Because people are going to not want to build a home because it becomes too expensive for a startup cost. Because now with the regulations and the fees, people have to have X amount of dollars already in hand before they can even start building. Okay, no materials even accounted for yet. And so what you're going to see is you have less people being self-reliant, building their own homes, starting their own businesses, living their life. Democrat policies hurt the poor principally because what it does is it de-incentivizes upward mobility. And what they do incentivize are things that have historically always led to poverty, like single motherhood. Now, when you understand that the Democrat Party is in transition towards socialism, this makes perfect sense because a population that is completely dependent upon the state, that is, they are getting incentives to become dependent upon the state, and they're de-incentivized from being free and self-reliant, you have a population that is, by definition, slaves. Because what is a slave? A slave gets everything that they need from their slave master.
Else. That's right.
And they have no personal autonomy or independence. So when you have a population that is not self-reliant, they cannot build their own house, they cannot decide where they can go, which is what we're seeing right now with the lockdown. They can't make these decisions for themselves and be independent free agents. But they can have everything provided for them: food, shelter, occupation, etc., healthcare, you name it, right? If they can have everything provided for them and they have no freedom, they are a slave. Right. But in socialism, everyone is a slave.
Right.
And that is the whole crux, like in Orwell, right? Freedom is slavery, is one of the mottos, I believe, of the Ingsoc regime that Orwell is describing. And of course, you have Thomas Jefferson, kind of describing this, right? A government that can give you everything that you need can take everything that you have.
Exactly.
And so this is the sort of thing that the Democrats are setting up. So anytime you look at a Democrat policy regarding the economy, and this is all I wanted to say on this, look at what they're incentivizing through payment and look at what they're de-incentivizing through taxation and regulation.
Yes.
And you will understand.
That's a great point.
You will understand the society. So the word of the day, gentlemen, Sesame Street, right? P is for praxeology, the study of human nature.
Praxeology.
Yes.
Study of...
Okay, so we've talked about this. We've talked about the economics. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about
practice.
Here's something I'm sure you're both going to be really confused about.
Well, praxis is the word.
Praxis is a practice.
Yeah, or because John Michael just brought up the word praxis because I know he just came up to mind with the distinction between orthodoxy and orthopraxy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and praxis is the basis for the word etymologically for praxeology. Okay, so what is orthopraxis? It's orthodox action. It's practice, but it's also action. So what is the study of human action? It's praxeology because it's the study of human practice or action.
And John Michael figured that all out.
I love that. I love praxeology, the
John
study
Michael
of human action.
is the master of disaster with regards to praxeology.
That's you.
Amen.
You're the pastor of disaster.
No, you're the
Pastor
master
of
of disaster. I'm the pastor of disaster. You're the master of
Wow.
No. You're the Pope of Hope.
That's right. Earl says I'm the Pope of Hope. Let's not forget that. Okay, all of you, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, calm down.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about here tonight, with regards to voting Democrat.
Yeah.
And you better take this into consideration. You better know that this is going to affect your life. You might not think it is, because you might think it's so vague and out there that nobody's going to pay attention to it. But these people are perfectly serious with regards to climate change.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, the Democratic Party's platform sets aggressive goals of eliminating carbon pollution from power plants by 2035 and achieving what they say is net zero greenhouse gas.
Are we not going to talk about their...
Shut up.
Wow. I kill you.
This is achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions for all new buildings by 2030 with the goal of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, 2050.
Wow.
The platform makes no mention of the Green New Deal, a sweeping congressional resolution to combat climate change that is widely supported by the party's progressive wing.
We're not going to smell your
Can
gas.
they,
Also does not call for an end to fossil fuel. It does not. Listen, hey, if you think this is bad, understand that it does not call for an end to fossil fuel subsidies. An omission that has frustrated activists. Although Mr. Biden's or Mr. not knowing what he's talking about plan does.
Okay, so on climate change. Okay,
climate change.
Real quick.
Let me say this before you go forward.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to
Before I go forward, you're going to go back. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to Exodus. What is it? Chapter. I'm not going to pick up my book here, but I'm going to estimate.
What's that? Be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. Have dominion over and subdue the earth.
No.
And replenish it.
No, it's not.
Not allow the earth to subdue you.
It's not going to have anything to do with that. It's going to have after the flood.
Oh.
When God talked
now you can eat of all the animals that
it's not going to have nothing to do with that. It's going to say
we're not vegans anymore.
I will never again I will never again destroy the world through a flood.
Oh, okay. That
so basically the anthropogenic and the climate change aspect.
Oh yeah, because they believe that the poles are going to melt eventually.
No, let me say what God says. This is just what God says.
God says that the poles are going to melt and we're going to be flooded.
Hey,
time out.
Can you listen to God for 1 sec here? Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry, God.
The Bible is going to tell you.
Not him. I wasn't referring to him.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Ken's
give me a moment. I need to. Whoa!
Sorry, you're talking
the gas emissions.
I think I heard.
Wow! Somebody had to admit gas.
I think I heard climate change.
There's some global warming going on here.
Run! Help!
I like to know how they're going to get rid of that global warming.
Yeah.
Are they going to start killing human beings?
There's some methane going on right now.
We're done. We're all dead in here. But anyway,
I do
let's
my best.
understand. Let's understand that God says that the next time that the world ends,
It's going to be with fire and
it's
brimstone.
going to end with fire and brimstone.
Correct.
It's not going to end with climate change.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Guys, give me your
Yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay, so anthropogenic climate change means
Yes.
that man causes the climate change.
Amen. That's what
Okay.
it means.
So
Well, of course we. I mean,
John Michael, Josh has got the floor.
go ahead.
thank you.
I thought he had the. Thought he had the gas there, but
I did.
He did have the
I
gas.
fully admit. That being said, all gas
aside,
considered-
all gas emissions aside.
aside or let loose, however you want to define
I love you guys.
emitted. Emitted.
I can't tell you
Omitted
how,
or emitted.
I can't tell you how much
Omitted. Omission.
Not omitted, emitted.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you perverts. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Anyway,
You guys are the go ahead.
can't pour a scotch with the lid on.
No, don't do it. Give me a little bit here too.
Well, this. I mean, this fits into the ideology of worshiping the earth, Mother Earth, all that kind of nonsense. You know.
No, wait a second. Josh was speaking.
Yeah.
I wanna
Well,
hear what
yeah,
Josh
that's
has to
okay.
say.
But I could say. I could
You
say.
can
what I
say
would
what you want to
first.
say when it's your
First.
turn. Okay. You want to talk about your turn.
Okay, so anthropogenic is the first thing that as Christians we have to deny because we do not believe that humans on this earth are going to cause the end of times.
Right.
These things are going to be brought about by the will of God. Only He knows the
Right.
day and the hour.
Amen.
And the thing is, and we look for the return
Yeah.
of Christ, and we say, "Come,
Yeah.
Lord Jesus, come." It is not going to be because of the
Yeah.
acts of man. Now we will hasten the Lord's day until He comes,
Because of our wickedness.
but when we say we hasten the Lord's day until He comes, we're not talking about throwing pop cans in the river. We're not talking about driving an SUV. When we say that we're hastening the Lord's day till He comes, we are referring to preaching the gospel to all nations because then the end will come. The gospel will go forth to all nations and then the end will come. And you will see the engrafting in of the Jews and we will see the fullness of all things and then the return of Christ. There is no sense in which man, by his own actions, for ill or for not,
yeah.
We'll bring about the end of the earth.
will bring about the end of the earth.
Yeah.
It's contrary to Christian faith, period.
Right.
Yeah.
So the anthropogenic aspect of climate change is automatically precluded. Now, that being said, let's continue on
Go ahead.
the climate change aspect. A
Go
couple
ahead.
things.
Amen.
First thing with the new paganism.
Amen.
Okay, the scientific naturalism that purports this, you can understand, because it is a unique and religious worldview, because scientific naturalism is no different than the paganisms of the past, as has been discussed before. Because this is the case, they have to have their own eschatology. They have to have their own theory of the end times. And what is the
Why
theory?
is that, Josh? Can you
Because
explain
also-
that? Why?
because
Why they
all-
have to have their own theory? Of the
Well,
end
because human nature.
Because they
Human-
worship the creature and not the creator.
Well, no, but,
No, wait
but the
a second.
question is, why do they have to have an eschatology at all?
Why do they have to have an eschatology?
Why? Well, why does any system have an eschatology?
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
because they're human systems, and humans have this innate sense that we aren't going to be here forever.
Okay.
We have an
Okay.
innate sense of the end of
Yeah.
the world, and so any
Yeah.
worldview that develops, whether it's Buddhist or Islamic or pagan,
gonna have an idea of how it's gonna
going
end.
to have because it's already inherent in human thought that there is a linear succession to time.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there are circular theories of time. They're more common in the Dharmic religions, such as in Hinduism or in Buddhism.
Read
but
Christ in Time by Oscar Coleman.
Christ in
I'm
Time.
just- yeah.
Well, there's also another good book called Four Views on God and Time. And it has views like by
Yeah.
William Lane Craig. It has, I mean, it's also very, very good.
a good book.
And in fact,
Christ in Time went back to it was due to the criticism and the critiques of the early 19th century, the mid 19th century. But Christ in Time is towards the end of
Yeah.
the 1900s, the beginning of the 20th century. But
I'll
go
have to
ahead.
check that out. I like that period.
There's also a really good book.
Christ in Time.
There's
Christ
also-
in Time by
There's also a
Oscar
really good
Coleman.
book that talks about, the progress of time and how, man sinned against God and becomes gradually degenerate over time. due to his fallen sinful nature.
The Bible.
That's called the. Oh, you read my mind.
No, I read the same book.
But Oscar Coleman speaks of the.
We got to cheers that one.
Oscar Coleman speaks of the.
We know how it ends, gentlemen. We really do.
Yeah, Oscar Coleman speaks of the Christ event as the midpoint of history. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so on anthropogenic climate change, we already covered the anthropogenic part, how we, as Christians we already preclude that position because we do not believe that man is going to determine the end of times by his actions. The second thing on the climate change aspect is that climate change is principally a pagan eschatology. Now, we just discussed how all worldviews have an eschatology because it's inherent to human nature. But regarding the pagan system, if you understand what they believe, as we've discussed before, the scientific naturalist worldview, the idea that man are material entities, that they're part of the material world, and that their actions have material consequences would imply that man acting materially in a material world would have material consequences that could be so great theoretically that they could bring about their own demise. All of this is only, as a theoretical framework, it's only possible in that worldview. So the idea that we could change the climate and that, I mean, it's consistent with scientific naturalism, which is just paganism, and it's consistent with a humanistic, man-centered world that is contrary to the scriptures. Now, regarding do climates change? Now, let me get to another point. Do climates change? Now, given my critique of propaganda, the fact that we're even discussing this kind of buys into the argument. I am actually performing an example where you could criticize me and say I'm doing that right now, where I say, well, I will concede that climates can change over time. I mean, you can have old timers around here saying, oh yeah, well, when I was a kid, it always snowed by the first day of buck season, you know. Hell, every time I went out in the woods, you could see prints. You know what I mean?
I hear pretty well. I like that.
I have heard it.
I like that.
I have heard this my whole life.
Oh my goodness!
When I was a kid, we never had problems with ticks like they have now. Everybody's got ticks. Okay.
You remind me of my granddad.
Yeah. Well,
I'm good.
I have a few of these examples in my life.
But the problem with that is the problem with those kind of statements is they're not based on any kind of data.
Correct. No, that's fair. And I would probably say that I would tend to agree with you. Now you have the little ice age in the Middle Ages. You have different warm-ups and cool-downs. And even if you followed their own data, now this is actually really interesting. I used this in a debate one time, and it was very, very fun. If you actually look at their own data with like the Precambrian era and all these different eras that they believe
Precambrian era?
Yeah, I don't believe in it. I'm a young earth creationist. I don't believe in this stuff. But if you use their own arguments against them.
Just so long as we're clear.
If you use their own arguments against them, if you were to take all of the carbon on Earth right now, all of the oil under the ground, all the coal, all carbon, and you were to burn it all right now.
We wouldn't add up to 1.5 billion years ago.
Well, no. If you burned all the carbon right now, it would actually probably be beneficial for the environment. Because during periods of time where you have higher carbon emissions into the atmosphere, higher CO2, global warming effect, you have an higher CO2 actually results in increase in plants, an increase in that botanical production on the earth. And actually biodiversity increases anytime CO2 increases. So actually we're not even like a fraction as close to the CO2 rates, according to these people, as earlier times in human history. And they would actually even admit that higher CO2 does yield higher biodiversity. And so technically speaking, if global warming was real, it would actually be a good thing that we should all support.
So everybody should have 2 cars and be driving them all the time.
Yeah, we should all be burning tires because technically speaking, when you increase CO2, you actually increase biodiversity.
Go faster, Pastor.
Yeah, in fact.
What? Are you making fun of my driving from Punxsutawney to... I can't believe it.
Burn those tires, baby. Burn.
I am hurt.
Burn, baby, burn.
I am hurt. This man is suggesting that I drive too fast.
Oh, no.
Yes, he is. Let's excommunicate him.
I don't know. I have to see it firsthand. You know, you can only make a prosecution
Come with us on Sunday.
2 to 3 witnesses.
Come with us on Sunday, and you'll see that he is absolutely out of his mind.
I don't know. You look kind of dangerous to me. You have a look in your eye.
He can't. He's got to work on Sunday.
No.
Let's
move on because we got to conclude here.
I wanted to make a statement there.
Make your
like
statement.
the whole idea of climate change is founded on a worship of the creature. It's founded on a worship of creation.
Romans 1.
You know, it's founded on, we need to make Mother Earth better. And so we need to get rid of fracking, and we need to get rid of all these things to help to bring in jobs and help to improve the economy.
Save the
and
polar
help to make our lives as humans better, because
Save the pandas.
oh no, because we need to watch out for the environment.
Save the dodo. Oh wait, too late.
Well, but that's completely it's an idea, a worldview that's predicated on the basis that what really matters is creation.
That's right.
Well, creation doesn't matter in a long spectrum. You know, what matters is humans. You know,
Okay,
humankind.
I wanna
what
qualify
matters
this
is God. Okay, what primarily matters is God and what He says in His Word, and then what matters outside of God is human beings who create in His image, and not animals or anything else that is subject to humans.
I have a couple qualifications I want to say.
Sure. Well, we're not to abuse. Of course, we're not to abuse
Go ahead.
the
Go
creation
on.
that God has
Josh.
given us.
And that's what I was getting to. That's what I was getting to. I know
of course,
we're
we're
in
not to
agreement.
do that. But what they're talking about, the policies that they're saying in play, goes far beyond just abusing. Goes far beyond abusing a human abuse of creation.
Correct.
Okay,
He had his turn. It's my turn now. He goes to
Your
a
turn is over.
Your
turn has
We're going to arm wrestle for whose turn it is.
Put your arm
Rock, paper, scissors.
I'll arm wrestle him.
There you go.
It's over for you, dude.
Oh.
Give it up.
No, you can do it. You can do it. Oh.
Oh, Josh.
You can do it. You can do it.
To him. Give it
I don't know. Hey, Joe Michael. It's my turn.
It's his turn.
So
You're done,
anyway,
John
what I
Michael.
was saying,
Give up.
So it all
Give
it all
up.
amounts to it. Okay,
He
what I was
he
saying,
won't arm wrestle me. He
What?
knows what's going to happen.
left-handed,
Yeah.
maybe.
Hey, I don't know. Left-handed, I'm pretty good. I can give you a ring left-handed.
I think his.
My left hand's pretty
Anyway,
strong.
let me finish my thought
All right,
here.
go ahead.
Okay.
No, we don't want to hear.
So what the policies that they're seeking to put in play doesn't have anything to do with a human abuse of creation. It goes beyond abuse of creation to idolizing and protecting creation as Mother Earth, as the fountain of all things,
Correct.
all living things, because of their evolution and their
Well, for them, it's God, right? Nature is God.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
And they
Josh.
worship it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay.
Just like you worship your biceps.
You dropped your
I heard
pencil.
you talking over there.
I can't help
Oh, I can beat John Michael in
Hey.
arm wrestling
Nah,
contest.
I don't think so. I think
Hey,
Josh.
somebody call a vet because these pythons are sick.
What is it that Hulk Hogan used to say?
24-inch python.
24-inch python.
That's right.
Hey,
baby.
brother.
Yeah, baby.
Hey, brother.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. Yeah.
We could do a Randy Savage. Ooh,
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Come on.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Josh.
Climate change is coming to you. Oh, yeah.
Give it to him,
Hey,
Josh.
brother. Don't you know that we need to stop the the emissions, our gas emissions and the climate in our culture today, brother?
Hey, you can tell that things have changed because what he used to say was, say your prayers, take your vitamins, be a true American. That's what he used to say.
Yeah.
You would never
Yeah.
be able to do that anymore.
Right.
Why, you can't take your vitamins anymore?
And
Say
your prayers
Hulk
and be a true
Hogan would
American.
be.
Oh.
Hulk Hogan
No,
would
you can't
be.
take your vitamins either because vitamin C is a conspiracy. You know, if you say that vitamin C can treat coronavirus, apparently you're a nutcase. Like we haven't eaten fruit for our entire history.
But anyway, Josh, go ahead. Say what you
Yeah,
gotta
so going back to the replenish the earth aspect, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Amen.
Okay, take dominion of it.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh yeah. So
Randy Savage, he is never to be forgotten. He is our man. Let's make him the idol of our podcast. Randy Savage.
Ooh,
yeah.
Joe Michael,
Ooh, yeah.
did you enjoy that?
Did you enjoy that, John Michael?
Ooh,
yeah.
Yeah.
What the Rock?
Is cooking.
Wow, we need to stop watching wrestling.
Yeah, we do.
People have lost a lot of respect for RIQ.
Just
When we're like
listening
talking
to John
about like
Michael.
Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage.
Yeah.
They're like, whoa.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
A
it should
minute
be.
ago, they were talking about Aristotle, and now it's Hulk Hogan.
It should be if you smell what the pastor of disaster is cooking.
Amen.
You,
Amen. Go ahead, Josh.
you guys
Speak.
smelt what I was cooking with my
Speak your
gas
piece.
emissions.
Speak your piece, brother. Speak your piece, brother.
Anyway, go ahead.
So regarding, we drank that whole bottle.
Almost. Wow.
There's a drop left.
That is amazing. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We
Josh, I
much
can't
appreciate
believe
it.
how much you drank there.
Excuse me? Excuse-moi. I was
I
not the
can't
only one to
believe-
All
consume
right,
this.
go ahead.
I can't
All right.
believe
nectar of the
what
gods.
you drank. Go ahead.
But replenish the earth. I do think Christians are called to replenish the earth and have dominion over it, and I think certain biblical principles must apply. So regarding like environmental regulations, I'm against the EPA. I'm against all these government agencies and all these regulations that they bring forth. But what I will say
Yeah.
is this, is that we need to have simple liability. If you damage someone else's property because
Repair
of something
it.
you do, yeah, you have to repair it or you're liable.
You cut down a tree, you plant another one. You
I
plant
mean,
three.
That's a good principle. But if you, let's say, you take a dump in the river and it goes downstream into someone else's pot and they die, you should have to pay for that.
wait a minute.
Okay, let me give you a better example.
Hold on. Hold on. We've gotten out of line here. I'm gonna read.
If you take
I'm
a
gonna read
dump in the
that.
river.
I'm gonna read Johnny's Greek text commentary here.
If you take a dump
Yeah.
in the river.
Wow.
Okay, that's the best
Honest
example.
interpretation must
Ooh, yeah.
be listened to, and no matter what trajectory.
Okay, that may not have been the best example. So, okay, if you
If you throw your garbage into the river.
okay, yes, it
Okay.
goes
Okay.
down to someone else's property and it ruins their part of the river.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're financially liable for whatever damage is to their property or person.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
agree.
But here's the thing: if you
Agreed.
did that, you would solve all these
Agreed.
problems.
But it's not a crime against creation. It's a crime, or it's not a crime against creation in general. It's a crime from man to man.
Yes, so you can only commit crimes against man and against God.
Yeah.
This is what the Ten Commandments teaches us with
Yeah.
the first and second table.
Yeah.
There's crimes against God and there's crimes against
Yeah.
man.
I
And
can't-
ultimately, when you commit commands,
I can't commit a crime against a puppy.
and the unity of the law is this: that if you commit crimes against man, you also commit crimes against God because man is made in His image.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
That's
that's
right.
the unity of the law between the first and second tables.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to environmental practice,
Amen, brother.
I would actually call myself an environmentalist in a qualified sense. And there's a guy named Joel Salatin who I really like. He calls
You
himself.
do. I don't want you to be
Well, no,
part
listen.
of my
No,
church.
wait. This is what Joel Salatin says, which I
Wow.
think is really good. He says, he goes,
I don't want no environmentalist.
no, listen.
No, I'm sorry. You're
Wow.
out of here.
Bird.
You're
Bird.
God.
like the rainforest. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'll listen.
We take it all down.
I'll listen to you.
one tree shall remain.
This is all,
Ooh, yeah.
Dominion.
this is all because of Johnny Walker's Black Label. Go ahead.
See what happens.
Go ahead.
Okay.
ahead.
So,
Okay, so
as Joel Salatin says, he calls himself a Christian, environmentalist, libertarian, lunatic farmer. And he says these things because they seem somewhat contradictory. But here's the point. When to be a true environmentalist in the biblical sense is to desire to replenish the earth. It's kind of like that old saying that when I'm going to leave the place better than when I found it. Okay?
Yeah.
Now take that principle,
Yeah.
biblically speaking, to your approach to things as a Christian. I am very critical of factory farming. And the fact that factory farming is not a tenable system or a sustainable system is proven by the fact that oftentimes it's supported by government subsidy and regulation. I'll give you one example in Texas: beef defamation laws. If you speak out against the beef industry in Texas, this used to be the case anyway. It was actually even issued in a episode of King of the Hill, which takes place in Texas, in Arlington, a fictitious city outside of Dallas. In that series, in the one case, he has
Arlington is in a fictitious city.
No. The specific Arlington in King of the Hill is named as a suburb of Dallas, which does not exist.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
Okay, regarding King of the Hill, which my wife and I liked King of the Hill back when we first moved to Pittsburgh. So whatever.
It was a little degenerate.
It got worse as the series went because people ran out of ideas and it got stupid.
But it kind of reminds me of you, actually.
What?
Who does
you think?
Who? What? Hank?
Hank, yeah. A little bit, right?
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Before you proceed, I want to know what you're accusing me of.
He's a handsome fella.
Okay.
Yeah, he's,
All right,
We'll leave it at that.
he's not a bad
I'm
looking
good.
guy.
Yeah.
I'm good.
We know we just lied to him like hardcore. Right?
Wait a minute. You lied. You lied. I thought you were honest dudes.
Well, it's true now because I just told you.
You can look it up afterwards.
Wait a minute. Are we being
Okay, how about
subjective
this?
here?
How about you look up Hank?
Hank Hill.
Look up Hank Hill, and then you make the decision for yourself where you think he's.
Am I
handsome
being
fella.
subjective here, or what? Am I being?
Is beauty in the eye of the beholder?
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm
maybe
definitely
not. I don't know.
beautiful.
Edwards makes a pretty good argument that beauty has to do with symmetry and harmony.
Oh, definitely. I'm symmetry.
Symmetry.
Yeah, I'm symmetry.
Yeah, I don't know. Your one eye looks a
Your
little lower than the other.
symmetry.
No, not that
It's
bad.
symmetry.
I'm good.
You're not quite Sloth from Goonies, but there's something not symmetrical going on.
Absolutely, what you would.
Maybe if you grew out your facial hair,
no.
Yeah, what's up with that mustache?
Oh yeah, that
kinda-
mustache is
croony mustache, man.
absolutely perfection.
It's borderline Hitlerian.
yeah.
kinda
Admit it,
going.
admit
Yeah.
it, admit it.
Maybe you should just dye your mustache black.
Yeah,
Are we,
'cause-
are we talking about the pasture of disaster?
yeah, we can only see that mustache correctly in certain
Okay.
waves of light.
All right. Come on.
It doesn't really exist all the time
yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Only
Shut
it only
up.
exists.
Shut up.
I think we should all
Be
grow.
quiet
We need to
and
grow
go
buck
on.
beards this
And
year for
I'm
November.
beginning to think yous are insulting me. Stop
It only exists when the light is so.
Anyway, as
when the
Josh
light is
was
so
saying,
dark that I can barely
as
see it.
Josh was saying.
As Josh was saying.
Yeah, as Josh.
I think Christians are obligated to be good stewards of what God has created them. And I do think that lends itself to sustainable agricultural practices
Yeah.
that make the earth more fruitful than when you found it. And so any
Yeah.
agricultural practices that do not do that do not seek to make the earth more fruitful than when they found it. And not only that, but use practices that
Yeah.
are, and I don't want to use the word humane because I don't want to impute imago Dei principles to animals. But what I will say is this, is that generally speaking, when you treat an animal well, the food quality from that animal is superior. So for instance,
Yeah.
a cow, a
what are
dairy
we
cow.
talking about here, though?
Well, we're talking about
Yeah.
their environmental policies of the left.
The
Okay?
environmental policies. of
well,
the
here-
world.
here's the difference, though,
we can
Josh.
oppose.
Hold on.
Listen.
Wait,
I
wait,
don't want to
wait, wait,
disturb
wait.
him.
I'm just
I
saying-
just want to make sure
I've been,
we
okay,
understand.
I've been trying to make
what
this
we're talking
point now
Here's
for
the
like
difference
15
between-
minutes.
Here's the difference between what you're saying and
No.
what they're saying. What you're talking about is preserving the land for the purpose of humans. What they're talking about is preserving the land for the purpose of simply preserving the land.
Okay, and I think that's fair.
Okay.
The state park policy is an example.
Go ahead.
Federal, once again, this applies to statism because what they want end up advocating for is more federal-owned lands.
Yeah.
Like most of Nevada is owned by the federal government.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, large portions of Pennsylvania are owned by the federal and state governments, and they're not
Hunting grounds.
They're not allowed for private development. That is wrong. Okay,
Right. It is.
Now that being said, if we were to develop land as Christians, we would have to oppose the practices of certain crony capitalists in the past who did intentionally pollute rivers and lands and things like that without regard because
Yeah.
they didn't have a biblical worldview in which
Yeah.
they understood that we need to leave this land as an inheritance for our children.
Well, that's not really true capitalism, though.
No, I would agree. And
Because
fact that
the reason that they did that is because
But
they were
capitalism
supported by the government
I
to
would
do
agree,
so.
and I would agree with that.
But capitalism isn't the goal here. The goal here is to live as God wants us to live.
Which is capitalism.
Well, which I would agree. Living with property, liberty, and life. I mean, the fact that we have life, liberty, and property, I think we can infer that from Scripture. Yeah. But what I'm saying with replenishing the earth is simple as this, is that Christians should not be opposed to,
having an apple orchard.
Well, not only that, but like making sure that you plant trees after you cut so many down, or making sure that you butcher your animals in a humane way.
Here's the thing. When they're talking about climate change, doesn't apply to half Americans.
Correct.
Half of the Americans, because half of the Americans aren't cutting any trees down. They're not doing anything. All they're doing is going to a 9-to-5 job and working for corporations.
Correct.
So
yeah, they don't understand because a lot of these people live in cities and they're kind of ignorant of things like, typically, you might have somebody burn their garbage in a rural area. It's really not that big of a deal. These same people, in fact, there's been studies that have shown this, is that conservatives are actually better about recycling and doing environmentally conscientious activities than liberals are. Now, why is that the case? Liberals for anthropogenic climate change. Well, it does make sense because Christians believe in personal responsibility, as you've brought up.
Because conservatives can believe in preserving and conserving the environment for the sake of man.
Correct.
Like, liberals don't care about preserving
and I think you make
the environment for man.
And you make a good point there. Here's a good illustration of that. The forest fires.
They just want to get on the back of the little puppies, and
what? All right. Anyway, forest fires in California.
Be still, my son.
Think of the forest fires in California. Yeah. Okay. Now
we want to make sense here. To the general populace.
Why are forest fires happening in California?
Because they're mishandling the environment.
Okay, now
because they're not cutting trees down.
They should
be cut down.
They're not clearing out brush.
Well,
they're not clearing out dead trees.
They've made as an idol. Let's go to the Bible. They've made as an idol their worship of the land.
We don't want to kill this dead tree because it's sacred to the environment.
Yes, and that is absolutely idolatry.
Yeah, the land was because the world was made for man. It is a presupposition of Christians that the woods cannot be left unmaintained by humans. See, this is a big differentiation between a secular environmentalist
how would that all
and
feel?
A Christian.
How would put yourself in the shoes of that old tree? You're gray.
I'm not putting myself in the shoes of any old tree.
I'm
just saying
you're coming up in years. How would you feel if somebody just shot you down and cut you down in the old time of your life?
We don't need to be concerned with the life of an old tree.
Don't you understand the feelings of this tree?
No.
This tree cares for you.
No, absolutely not.
Don't you understand?
A couple things. Overpopulation kind of fits in with this a little bit too, because people bring up statistics regarding overpopulation. And the thing is, what you end up finding is that the issues we have are not overpopulation. We actually produce more food on less hectares than we did 50 years ago.
Right.
But on top of that, also, when it comes to population, the issues tend to be population density in specific locations. Basically, urbanism. Yeah. That's the problem. Is resource mismanagement, not resource lack. We actually have plenty of resources to feed all the people here in spades. There's enough land available only in the Guinea Plateau of Africa to provide all of the food for the entire world.
What's going on over there?
So only in one part of Africa, in just one part of Africa, we could provide all the food to everybody. And everybody in the world could fit into the state of Texas, and they would be able to own a lot that's 66 by 66 foot, as many stories as they would require. So, I mean, a family of a dozen people could all have their own homes and land and all fit in the land of Texas alone and have all of their food produced by only the Guinea Plateau in Africa. And that would provide sufficient food for sufficient population, and the rest of the world would be completely vacant. Overpopulation is a myth.
Not to mention that there's one thing that keeps kind of, staring us in the eye that we have to deal with from generation to generation called death.
Yeah, I mean that's true too. But that being
You're being overly simplistic, John Michael.
another point is,
You're
is
being
that
overly
with
simplistic.
replenishing the earth, when we
That's not-
when we replenish the earth,
Well,
we are
I'm
replenishing
not being
the earth.
oversimplistic though,
Well,
because
no. Well, I want to finish my point.
Go ahead.
With replenishing the earth, you're talking about John Michael.
Yeah.
We're talking about how the environmentalists of the secular
One more
nature
John Michael needs to be born.
of the John Michael's point was with the
that's very true.
Yeah.
oh heavens no.
Oh, no.
10 more. 20 more.
I agree with you.
Is that the
Yeah.
apocalypse you're
Yeah,
referring to?
we need to rid the earth
Ooh,
of John
yeah.
Michaels.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Ooh yeah. Go ahead, John.
Referring to
Speak your position.
environment.
Don't let this heathen disturb you.
I agree with John Michael that
No,
the
you
world. No. That the idea is that the difference between Christians and non-Christians is that Christians believe in replenishing the earth for the sake of other humans, because Christians understand that the way that the world was created, that you can't leave a forest alone without human management, because the forest will deteriorate without people. This is important. Because the reason the forests are on fire in California is not because of global warming, but because humans were specifically not managing it.
Amen.
If man,
Demo-
as God had commanded
Dominion.
him,
Dominion.
had gone in there and cleaned out the freaking brush,
Dominion.
duh, like all these dry trees laying around on the ground, that couldn't lead to a fire. Who am I? Yeah, let's just leave wood laying around. Like that's not going to be bad in the desert.
Amen.
Duh. Okay, that's called mismanagement, because God told you to take dominion, replenish the earth, and that's the whole thing. Is it's an entire different in theory of environmentalism. The Christian theory of environmentalism is this: is that if you have a woods untended by man, that forest
needs to be tended.
Yes, that forest is actually susceptible to decay, deterioration,
It's
and
harmful
damage.
to humanity.
It's harmful to humanity, and it's harmful to that very environmental zone. So here's the thing: without man, the environment cannot prosper. Without man, animals cannot prosper.
and that's the other
because
thing.
They were made for us, and we were made to tend to them.
And that's the point. The other point that I was making is that this, this in view of
Finally, I got to make that point after 30 minutes.
this view.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Good grief.
John
This
Michael
view-
finally
this-
succumbed.
Well, it's not my fault that he takes
I
you
am-
about.
No, I can't help it. I'm being interrupted every 30 seconds.
I am very. Oh my! Yes, yes, yes. We have won the day. Yes. Oh, rah.
Anyway, okay.
This guy, this John Michael has.
Yeah, it's a very valid point, but I think the
No,
other.
there's no valid
the
point.
ultimate-
You're over.
No, Josh's
You're done.
point. Josh's point is valid, but then
Yeah,
the
Josh's point is valid, but yours isn't.
Listen, the final,
It's over.
The final point that I
over.
wanted to make is that
It's over.
it leads to.
Yes.
If we talked about population control,
We're
that's
over.
where environmentalism leads to.
Yes.
We have to control the population because we're, like you said, we're not going to be able to provide food for everybody because the environment's failing. It leads to a devaluing of human life.
Well, like the
so we have
Gilgamesh
to
epic.
control how many people. We have to control
Yes.
how many children each couple has.
Well, like the Gilgamesh epic I brought up when we were discussing in the Atrahasis epic, when we discussed that on the scientific naturalism of the paganism, the three pillars of paganism, when we had discussed that, what was taught in the Atrahasis epic, it was taught that because of the threat to nature, the threat to the world that man posed, the pagan gods punished man to reduce his population through sexual immorality, principally, because man growing on the earth would be a threat to the world.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
If man poses a threat to the world, then it's only natural that we would want to reduce his numbers.
Correct.
I was watching. It's funny. I was at my grandma's
Correct.
house the other night. We were watching
Correct.
Bizarre Foods with Andrew
Oh, yeah?
Zimmerman. Have you ever seen that with
No,
Andrew Zimmerman?
no.
It's a really good show. Basically, it's this dude. He travels all over the world and eats bugs and stuff. It's awesome. But anyway,
Really? Wow. Okay. Man,
Bugs and stuff.
that sounds like
Oh, my
that
goodness.
sounds like the kind of show that Pastor would really like.
no,
Hey, wait a
it's the kind
minute.
of show I
You're-
would like. But
you're
do you know
a
what?
jerk.
He eats food out of a can that it's just as bad.
No. Let me tell you about this though.
Let me
On the
tell
Bizarre
you
Foods.
something.
Let me
qualify.
Let me tell
Let
you
me
about this. You
qualify
gotta
what
hear
he's
me.
saying.
You
Hold
got-
on.
Okay,
Hold
good,
on.
good,
Hold
good.
on.
Pastor has to
Hold
speak.
on,
Go
he's
ahead.
qualified. I gotta
Pardon me.
qualify what he's saying.
Go ahead.
I follow my grandmother's footsteps, and I eat canned green beans. That's it. That's all he's talking about here, and he's
Canned
trying.
vegetables.
He's trying to make an
He doesn't
issue
like
out
fresh
of it.
vegetables.
But you know what he is? He's a pagan. He's a pagan. He's a pagan.
Because I believe in eating fresh vegetables.
Yes.
Wow.
We
okay.
all like
what?
canned green beans.
I don't like green beans at all. So I don't know what you're talking
Canned
about.
green
I hate
beans.
canned green beans.
Whatever it is that we eat, canned,
I hate canned green beans.
canned is all there is.
Hey, are you?
No.
Hey, are you a spam man?
Yes.
Yes, he
Oh.
loves.
My goodness.
Stop it. Stop it. Let's all throw up our hands and worship.
Well, throw up.
God.
Yeah, throw up is going to
You're
happen.
the bacon.
Yeah, throw up is going to happen. Me thinking about your dietary choices is
Throw up.
going to make me throw up.
No, brothers and sisters, don't listen to him. Listen to what I'm telling you. This is what we were wanting. Green beans, canned Del Monte. Del Monte.
Yeah, the scotch was a good idea tonight, guys.
Listen. Stop. Here. Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
what
Anyway.
were we talking about here?
We're talking
Climate
about
change.
The environment. Yeah, climate change.
I think we're agreed. I mean, we could probably
Yeah.
move on. But the,
Yeah.
the point is, I think we all agree,
Yeah.
is that
We're going to talk about homos, right?
No.
What?
eventually we're gonna
What?
We're not
We're
making
talking
fun of-
about the Democratic Party. We're not going to talk about homosexuality.
Okay, let's
Michael quote. We're not going to talk about
let's
homos, are we?
go on. Finish
No, I
up
said
here.
we're going to talk about homos, aren't we?
Finish up
Yeah, that's
here.
right. That's even better.
The
gotta
the
put that on a
Democratic
shirt.
Party platform. Okay, let's understand. First of all, we need to understand that we agree with Democrats. They support decriminalizing marijuana.
Wait. That would be a
Okay.
great. That would be a
That
great
would be-
T-shirt.
that would be great.
We're gonna make a T-shirt that says
Dec-
we're gonna talk about homos, right?
Decriminalize. No, we're talking about decriminalizing marijuana. We're not talking
Okay.
about decriminalizing.
I want to talk about that. Can I talk about that?
Homosexual.
I want to talk about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Please.
I do agree that we should decriminalize cannabis. And when I say decriminalize,
No,
I don't mean
we said decriminalize marijuana.
it's the same thing.
Are
Marijuana,
you
cannabis.
sure?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Cannabis is the medical term for it.
Okay.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Just making sure.
Okay.
We're-
Okay. That being said, the reason I believe in decriminalization goes back to the same point I made about healthcare, is that people have the right to pursue the means for their own survival.
Okay.
And so, if cannabis aids you in providing for your medical needs and you can grow it yourself, I think more power to you. I think government interference and regulation of these things only results in negative things. People who argue against cannabis as Christians, I think, are misguided. I think when it comes to cannabis, as far as the effect that it produces, if you go to Proverbs 31 regarding what is recommended by King Lemuel regarding the use of alcohol is used for its psychotropic effects regarding, let's say, your feelings of poverty, feelings of being ill, feelings of ailing.
Yeah.
Those things, alcohol is commended to actually treat those things. Cannabis has a psychoactive effect. That effect is similar to what is being described in Proverbs 31. So on a biblical basis, I would say cannabis can be used to treat issues not merely of a physical sort, but also of a mental sort, as an aid for Christians.
I can't believe the Democrats hold that position, though, by the way.
Well, the thing is,
They have to. They
have
have
to.
to. They have to.
It's not going to last. It's
because
not going to last
It's not
very
going to
long.
last because
It's not
in
going to
the
last. Let me tell
Democrats
you.
in the Democrats platform, human choice is.
They believe in gun control. We're
yeah,
not going to talk
yeah,
about gun
no.
control.
yeah, but the thing is, what the Democrats refer to decriminalization, they typically end up supporting not pure decriminalization, because there's a difference between legalization and decriminalization. Generally, the Democrats legalize cannabis and regulate it. They rarely decriminalize it. That is, in the sense that they make it basically permitted for people to use as they would so see fit. They want to grow and manufacture and sell it. So once again, my approach is for medicinal uses and for Christians aiding in their own medical treatment. Cannabis, I believe, is biblical and permissible for Christians to use. That would be my position.
I agree with that. I agree.
John Michael, what's your opinion on that matter?
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
We're in consensus on
Yep.
that. So let's move on.
Education. Okay, we got two more categories.
Education.
Democrats
And the
support
homos.
making public. What?
And the homos. We got to talk about education and the homos.
About gun control. About gun control.
Ooh.
Ooh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Democrats support. Listen, folks. Just to make sure, we've gone off on a lot of tangents here tonight.
No.
Josh would
Oh,
agree.
no.
Josh would agree.
Yeah.
But what
pastor
we're
has been
talking
responsible
about,
for all
what
of
we're
this.
talking about here, and I've got to be responsible as the pastor, is that we've got to be understanding exactly what it is we're voting for. Okay? And what we're voting for, if you're voting as a Democrat and you're voting for education, understand that Democrats support making public... Stop it, please. Democrats support making public colleges and universities tuition free for students whose family earn less than $125,000.
Boy, that's a lot of money around
The
here.
proposal does not go as far as the plan proposed by Bernie Sanders, which stipulates tuition-free public colleges and universities for everyone.
Wasn't that the same?
Platform. Shut up.
Silence! I thought you were sorry. I thought you were
I'm
done
not
reading.
done.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not
I thought
done.
you were done.
You can speak after I'm done.
Silence! I kill
And before you speak, bow down and worship.
Whoa. The Pope of Hope has spoken.
Amen.
I knew his true colors would come out.
Amen. Amen.
Bow down.
Amen. The platform, however, does support making community colleges and trade schools tuition free for all students. Democrats also want to ban for public profit charter schools from receiving federal funding. What is their strategy here?
Well, that's interesting.
What is their
Banning.
strategy?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would say the whole first part, except for the last part about banning charter schools from receiving federal funding. That's interesting, but I would assume it goes into the whole policy of socialism, which is, at least the first part does giving free college to students. I mean, we've even seen this in New York State, where Governor Cuomo has said, I'm going to give free college to students that go to colleges that are not Christian.
Mm-hmm. The charter school thing is because the charter schools, I believe, are not run by the teachers' unions, and they basically can receive the same federal funds that public schools can.
Yeah.
And so the teacher unions are up in arms because that means that they actually have a direct competitor for the same tax funds.
I see.
Okay.
That's why I figure it was something along that lines.
Yeah, and that's why they would oppose that. Now,
Yeah.
basically, as Christians, our opposition to this comes down to the biblical foundations for education.
You don't steal from people to become educated. It's not a valid education.
Well, that's part one.
If you're gonna be educated, pay for it.
Part two would be educational standards that go beyond what Scripture would require.
Correct.
Not everybody is. I'll give you an example. And in a rural area where there's a lot of farmers, like in my wife's family,
Yeah.
they had exceptions to certain truancy laws where it was understood that certain times of the year that kids would miss a lot of school because they were needed on their family farm for harvest or for planting.
Correct.
This is not an immoral thing. This is actually a very, very moral thing. Because,
they consider as child labor.
yeah, which once again, child labor I don't think should be against the law because child labor actually helps people stay out of poverty. If you have 14 kids and 10 of them are able to mow lawns and bring in an income that at least 10% of that, let's say, went to the family household, that would help keep a family out of poverty. And the thing is that to prohibit that by law, I would say is immoral. in African countries,
Yeah.
people send their children sometimes thousands of miles away to work on farms producing things for Western nations.
Yeah.
And our fair, quote unquote, fair trade policies actually hurt that, because we tell companies that work in Africa, oh yeah, we're not going to buy coffee from you if the coffee beans are picked by children. But those children were sent there by their parents sometimes at great cost to themselves, over 1,000 miles, so that those children could help provide a supplemental income for their family. And we go in there being arrogant, saying, oh, okay, well, fair trade coffee. We're not buying coffee from farms that have children working. But because you do that now families are starving, because those families that sent their children to work on those coffee fields were doing that to benefit the whole family.
That's right.
And so child labor
That's
laws
right.
hurt poor people. They did.
And it wasn't like they were abusing their children.
No.
Their children were just working.
Yeah, and what's wrong with
And
work?
they're able to work.
What's wrong with work?
A 12, 13, 14, a 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old is able to work.
Yeah.
There's certain things they're able to do.
Correct. And we just infantilized our entire population that we've forgotten that. My great-grandfather started working in the coal mines when he was in 3rd grade. And when he was working in the coal mines, he taught himself to read.
Yeah.
And that was not unusual. So
Right.
the thing is we have forgotten what kind of hardiness that God has endowed the human race with. And the thing is that with families that have authority over their own children working and providing a supplemental income for the family, not only was that a historical norm and a norm still followed in much of the world today, but it's one that can help poor families from descending into painful poverty.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Well, I'm glad you guys were talking about the.
Please
idea
tell
of
me.
the
Please
minimum
tell me
wage.
we're getting to what's next.
The minimum wage there, and that was important.
Minimum wage.
Yeah, well, that's basically what you were talking about there.
Well,
Yeah.
we're talking about child labor laws,
yeah,
but
child
I'm
labor
against
laws, but in the minimum wage.
Come on, we're gonna get to talk
Homos.
about something.
Okay, minimum wage.
Gun
I'm against
control.
the
About gun
reason-
control.
The reason we should be against the minimum wage.
It's because it leads to
Minimum wage.
It leads
Inflation.
to people having to work for a lesser wage. I mean, you're putting people out of work when you're talking about a minimum wage.
Yeah.
You're putting people out of work because the bottom line is that a business is only going to be willing to pay a person
That's
a
true.
certain amount for
That's
a certain
true.
amount of labor.
That's true.
And if you're trying to drive up the price of the labor, then you're going to put out people out
Yeah.
of work.
Well, you're inflating the
Yeah.
prices of all
Yeah.
the consumer goods that come out of a certain industry when you do that. So if tomatoes were a certain price, if you require a minimum wage for those who are picking tomatoes, the price of the tomato
gotta
itself
go
will
up.
increase when
That's
it comes to
right.
market.
That's
so
right.
it actually hurts everybody when you do that. The free market should determine the price
No,
of a
it doesn't
wage.
hurt everybody. You're wrong. It benefits the government.
It does.
It does. Okay, well, let's move on. Education, and we're talking about democratic policies here. Education. I'm going to throw these in together. They might not seem to be related, but maybe they are. Education. Democrats support making public colleges and universities tuition free. Okay, foreign policy. Democrats support a two-state solution that would establish an independent Palestinian state alongside Jerusalem. I mean, alongside Israel.
Am I not a nice person?
Yeah, but do you know what? Jerusalem belongs to the Christians.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Jerusalem belongs to the Christians.
Jerusalem, which
All
is
hail
above
the Holy Crusade.
the Jerusalem, which is above, is
All
our
right.
mother.
Okay.
That's
Well,
right.
what else you got here?
That's it.
He's looking for the homos.
That's it.
That's it.
He
What?
wants. Joe Michael wants the homos.
Where?
Joe
No.
Michael loves homos.
We're not talking
No,
about.
I do not.
He's looking for the homos.
Where
right now.
is it?
He's like, where are the homos?
Criminal justice and racial justice. Here we
There-
go.
there
Why are
you
you
go.
talking about? You skip right over it.
No,
All
I
the
don't.
fun stuff.
I'm sympathetic to the homos.
What?
What?
What? No. No, we do not. No. No.
Hey, here's the question: did Pastor just return from the bathroom, or did he come out of the closet?
It came out of the closet.
It's right here. Listen.
Oh yeah.
Listen.
Oh
Listen.
yeah.
Listen, it's
yeah.
right here.
Oh,
It's right here. It's called
stop it.
criminal justice and racial justice.
Okay.
Government
if you
Democrats
insist.
want to overhaul the criminal justice system from top to bottom.
Do you want to put
And-
all homos in jail?
They want to. They do not support. It says the platform does not
We're not
include
listening
support
to
for
you.
defunding the police,
We're not listening to you.
but they support national standards governing the use of force.
We're not
like
listening
banning
to you.
chokeholds and certain things.
You're
Criminal
very-
justice and
Banning
racial
chokeholds.
justice. Racial justice.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we've already talked about that. That's a
Okay.
load
Well, they're
of
ambiguous.
baloney.
Democrat platform's ambiguous because there's two different factions within the Democrat Party. I mean, Joe Biden, he voted for a crime bill back in the early 90s that was over the top, probably tyrannical. And now they're like doing the opposite now, where they want to defund the police and just like completely endorse communist anarchy in the streets.
yes.
So the thing is they don't have a coherent vision for what they mean regarding the police issue. Just since that's been brought up politically lately, I would probably argue this is that I'm against defunding the police on a general level. I believe in privatizing the police.
Yeah.
By what I mean is that
Yeah.
local municipalities should have the right to receive bids
I'll buy that.
by private security firms
Yeah, I'll buy that.
for the services in their community. I don't think
Yeah.
a community should be left with a monopoly.
I would disagree with that.
I'll buy that.
Ooh, let's debate this.
That's the
Oh,
thing is
wow.
that when you're talking about the police department, let's just start from here. When you're talking about the police department, you're talking about a public service.
Yeah, but I don't believe in public services
Why not?
because public ownership of anything leads to communism.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay,
Yeah.
maybe.
Because public ownership implies that
But that only
because there's only private ownership. 'Cause there's only property is only private.
that only is the fact. Private ownership when
Why are you against
when
private
allow
ownership?
people when
Okay,
people
let me ask you
allow
this.
themselves to think that's the case.
Okay,
But no,
Whoa,
but public
whoa,
service
whoa.
leads to they can
Wait,
come.
wait,
They
wait.
can.
Joe,
Okay, go ahead.
let me
Go
do
ahead.
this.
Go ahead.
Let me handle this. Okay, so
Go ahead.
Okay, statistically, it's been
I'm willing
shown.
to change my mind. but-
Statistically, it's been shown.
You
It's
will change your
it's
mind.
Actually,
Yeah,
it's
I'll
actually
change my mind
It's
if
actually
I'm
been shown
argued out of
that
it.
private security forces, let's say you have a suburb or a development, like a small town, right?
Okay.
Let's say it's a community, and they hire their own security force to manage that suburb.
Yeah.
Those security firms have.
Now
been
wait a
shown-
second. Wait a second. Before you go on, let me ask the question.
Go ahead.
When you said a
Private security firm.
private security firm is employed to protect
Yes.
a
Housing community.
housing community,
Sure.
aren't we not subject to the will of the
security firm?
security firm
No.
or the
No, 'cause
people
they're
who
still-
are paying the most money?
No, because the security firm is enforcing the laws of the land, so of the nation and of the housing community. So
Who
then-
said?
Because that's what they have to do. by
Who
law.
said?
What do you mean? Who said?
Who said? I mean, when you're talking about the private security firm,
I'm talking about something
being-
that's currently in action right now. So if you go to certain towns in this country, they have private security firms that actually patrol the streets
where?
all over the place. There are like millions of them. I mean, they're everywhere.
Well, give me one. What are you talking about?
You don't know what a private security firm is? Is that what the confusion is?
Yeah.
A private
Yeah,
security
maybe.
firm is that when you hire someone to do policing activities. So, for instance, in developments all over this country, there's many of them, and gated communities, they hire private security. Like, for instance, if Hillary Clinton is walking around in public and she has guys walking around with guns, those aren't necessarily government-appointed ordinance.
They're
A lot of-
private.
Is that the situation everywhere?
It's a situation in a lot of places.
Where? Like
well-
here. Okay, let's take here
Bob.
in Clearfield County.
Okay.
Private communities in
Okay,
Pittsburgh.
when you're talking about here in Clearfield County, are we talking about a private security firm?
No, our police are typically in this area municipal,
Okay,
so they are publicly funded.
right.
Now, what I'm talking about here when I talk about police reform, I would be against defunding the police wholesale.
Okay.
I would be in support of opening it up to competition, okay, in a free market. So when you have police forces right now, You have one police firm owned by the municipality.
Well, you've
funded
already
by
defeated
tax
me
dollars.
when you talk about. You've already defeated me when you're talking about. What you just said.
Competition, market.
Competition. Yeah. I mean, there's no, forget it.
So what I'm saying is opening up to competition.
No.
Instead of a monopoly where you have one police force, they get a certain wage funded by taxpayer dollars, and the people of the community don't have a say in their policing.
So you agree with him?
I agree with
So
you.
what I'm saying is that when you open it up to
whenever there's competition, there's good.
Yeah, it improves because prices go down.
Yeah,
so the fees on individuals in the community would go down and performance would increase.
I'm with you.
So what I'm saying is policing should be open to that. There should be private security firms that should be permitted to bid.
Okay.
They should be permitted to bid.
Amen.
For the security force or the policing activities of any township.
I'm good.
So
with
let's say in our township, let's say whatever our township is, we'll just fill in the blank. We'll call it Moose Township.
Moose Township.
Okay, in
Morris Township, whatever.
Yeah, in Moose Township.
Yeah. Morris.
Moose Township.
Whatever.
In Moose, if you were to want policing done,
Right.
okay, you have either choice. You have either the township subsidized police. You don't give a choice. You don't like the fat guy who's doing it. Tough crap.
Okay.
Or you could bid on the security firm that comes in with the lowest bid offer, right? They say, hey, we'll provide the same services you're receiving for half the price. Your
Right.
taxes will go down,
Okay.
right? I think that should be an option in
Yeah.
all communities.
Yeah,
Private
absolutely.
security firms should be allowed to bid for the same opportunities to take care of the policing as any individual attempting to just simply work for the state arbitrarily.
Sure, why not?
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Well,
We're going to get to the homos.
I think we're just about. I mean, do you want to cover that?
I want to get the homos taken care of,
Yeah.
because I know that
Well,
deep
just
down
say-
inside that the homos
Let's
is preoccupying
say
a large
that
part of your mind.
I want you guys.
Well, I would say the Democrats supporting the. I mean, they keep adding different letters of the alphabet to it.
To the
Listen.
But
genders.
Listen. If you're a Christian out there, I hope you've been able to understand what the logic of what we've been able to go
But we
through
haven't even
tonight.
gotten into the two things. Like he brought up the homos, but we haven't even brought up like the
Yeah.
abortion. We haven't
Gun
brought up the
control.
abortion.
I'll give
gun
you
control.
the
Well, like, the most
opportunity.
important ones we haven't talked about.
Let
Gun
me
control,
talk.
abortion,
Let me finish up my part,
All right.
and then you guys can finish up your part.
gays.
Okay, you guys.
Hobos.
I want you to be able to deal with that.
Go ahead.
Okay. The thing is that I just want to make it clear that as Christians, if you're a Christian out there, you need to vote. You need to listen to what God says in His law. You need to stop imagining the way that you think that things should be. I want you to think about the way that God says that things ought to be. And in that respect, I'm going to turn it over here to Josh and John Michael to make their final arguments with regard to the way that things ought to be. Josh, go ahead.
All right. Well, let's talk about. We want to
I said
talk
Josh.
about first.
Josh.
Let's talk about gun
Josh.
control first.
Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
All right. Okay, so a couple things. In the scriptures, if you go back to Proverbs, if a man breaks into your home and you struggle with him and he were to die in the conflict, you are guilt-free of the law. Okay, so what that means is that if you kill a man who breaks into your home, you are not liable to punishment under the law of God in the Old
What
Testament.
means is, if you come into
Stop
my
it.
home
Hold on.
unjustifiably,
Hold on.
I have the
He's
right to gun you down.
He's not finished.
Yeah.
Let him finish. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Let him finish.
Yes. So, and also I think it's in Leviticus too, where men were required to have a spear at the ready for in terms of conflict. So what you end up having from the and this is actually referencing a debate between one of the Christian Reconstructionists, Greg L. Bonson. He debated a PCUSA minister who
My
was against
man.
guns.
My man,
And
Greg
Bon-
Bonson.
Yeah. Well, Bonson more or less annihilated
Gary
this
Morth.
guy.
Listen to what Gary Morth has to say. But
Yeah.
go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, Rushdoony, North, and
Rush
Bonson.
Dooney. Yes. North. Bonson.
Yeah, they're the
Yeah.
guys.
Amen.
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 But he had actually did a debate on gun control with another
yes.
quote unquote Christian in a liberal church, which would have been this similar to ELCA in Lutheran churches. So he debated this guy, completely smeared him. And one of the points he brought up from Scripture was in the Old Testament, men in according to the book of Leviticus, there were certain men that were required to have spears at the ready for combat. But also, you have in Proverbs the provision that if anybody breaks into your home and you kill them in the struggle, you are guilt-free of his bloodshed. Okay, so what that implies is the right to self-defense, a right to shed blood in certain circumstances in defense of your property and your family. And so gun rights are inherent according to the biblical worldview. Now that's guns. Now when we talk about transgenderism and homosexuality, I think that's plain.
Romans 1, for crying out loud.
Romans 1 is obvious.
Be still.
The thing is, with Romans 1, if you look at Romans 1 and you look at the Levitical laws, what you see is something worth capital punishment. Romans 1 reiterates this because in Romans 1 it says that those who, we say that these things are worthy of death, and not just them, but those who teach them. So if you teach others to practice these things and you practice them yourselves, you're liable to the death penalty because these things are worthy of death. St. Paul says so in Romans 1, reiterating the doctrine taught in the Old Testament that homosexuality and any anti-procreative lifestyle, willfully anti-procreative lifestyle, because it is a sacrifice of your own children or offspring you would otherwise have, you are guilty of blood and therefore liable to the death penalty.
Not only that, but Paul makes it clear in Romans 1 that that homosexuality is a punishment.
Correct.
Is a punishment for rejecting the knowledge of the one true God.
Yes.
So and worshiping the creature rather than the creator. So actually, supporting homosexuality is not just crime in of itself, but it's also an approval of idolatry.
It's social masochism, because if you support homosexuality, you're basically saying that I'm okay with this punishment from God, because that's what homosexuality is. It's a punishment. So it's a unnatural deviation from what
not to
God
mention
had
transgender.
created. Well, transgenderism is the same thing. I mean,
it's other crap.
A man who dresses up as a woman in Scripture is also liable to the death penalty if you look at the Old Testament.
Or a man
laws.
who has his parts changed.
Well, correct. You know, making oneself a eunuch. I mean, the thing is, all of these things that you see in the Old Testament
that's not what I'm
law,
talking about.
Well, yeah, it's punishable by death. It's a punishable crime. And basically what you see in the Democratic Party platform is a deviation from that order that God has established from the beginning.
Yes.
So man with woman, woman with man, man and woman as distinct but equal under the word of God.
Yes.
So with that system established in the Scriptures, when you see the transgenderism movement, LGBTQI, LMNOP, QRS, whatever it is,
UVOC.
that whole thing is contrary to the word of God, and no Christian can support it.
There's only two genders.
Because at the end of the day, here's another thing. The reason we, as a theonomist, I would say,
amen,
that homosexuality,
as a theonomist.
yes. So when I say these things are worthy of death, the application for today in a country that doesn't enforce those sorts of laws is that you Christians should view those things as worthy of those punishments, even if they're not enforced to this day. So even though our nation doesn't punish homosexuality with death, if you view it as worthy of such, you will understand the gravity of the sin properly.
You must vote against it.
You must vote against it.
You
because
must
it's
vote.
absolutely
Killing
wicked.
it.
Vote for Trump 2020.
I'm not even going to say vote for Trump.
Hey, there's only two candidates, okay?
Vote
so
against.
if you're not voting for Biden, you're voting for Trump.
No, you could vote for Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party.
No. Vote against.
Who's that?
Exactly.
A vote against.
Exactly.
You must vote against transgender.
Vote for Trump 2020.
No.
On the homosexuality issue too.
I don't care who you
I'm
vote.
against state marriage licenses altogether. So I don't think the government should be involved in marriage licensing whatsoever. So for me, the whole gay marriage thing wouldn't be a problem if we just didn't have state marriages and that was left to religious ordinance. The churches should be the ones that are doing the marriages.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you didn't have state marriages, we wouldn't have a problem with gay marriage.
I'm not going to tell you who to vote
And then
for.
those churches could be properly condemned as heretical.
Yeah, so
who allowed for homosexual marriages.
Well, yeah, if the fag churches have fag marriages, that's whatever. Okay, and we can oppose that from a church to church basis, but
They would go to war against them.
The state shouldn't be involved because ultimately marriage is a consensual contract, and that contract is legitimized by religious institutions with their own moral standards. So if you have a liberal church that has liberal theory of marriage and they have fags marrying, whatever. But as far as conservative churches, we believe in the Bible is the word of God, one man with one woman, and that is the only true definition of marriage. And so when we compete with these leftist churches, which once again, if they're marrying a bunch of gays, they'll probably go extinct in a matter of time anyway. So I'm not super worried about that. The religious shall inherit the earth. And those people who choose to not have children, not have offspring as a heritage unto the Lord, they'll die out by their own. They will reap the due consequences of their actions, as it says in Romans 1.
Right.
When they trade the natural affection for the woman for the unnatural affection, they will reap the consequences of that action, which is childlessness, despair, hopelessness, and the end of their civilization. Whereas those who have honored the word of God, they will persevere until the end. So if we have confidence in this, we can continue on. Yeah. Onward, Christian soldiers.
There you have it. Reasons you should not vote for the Democrat Party or support them in this coming up election.
I do think we've covered it all now.
2020.
We talked to homos.
Brothers and sisters, you cannot, if you're a Christian, vote Democrat. You cannot do it.
No, because when you do so, you oppose everything taught in the Holy Scriptures.
We're not here to make a political point. We're here to tell you what the Bible says.
Amen.
Do not, if you're a Christian, vote Democrat.
You have been listening to the Davisville Radio Show. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content.